Chapter 69. Hey, what's wrong with Monkey today? When Su Xinxing came to the lecture hall, he found Monkey like a corpse, lying in the last row of the lecture hall with a burnt look. Speaking of which, he didn't skip class even though he was in such a state. In a sense, this guy was quite serious. I'm not sure. The four-eyed class monitor also had a helpless look on his face. He's been like this since he returned to the dorm yesterday. No matter if it's introducing him to girls or inviting him to play games at the internet cafe, he's not even interested in our latest uncensored side dish. He's seriously ill. The four-eyed class monitor was quite concerned about his roommate and seemed to be quite worried about Monkey's symptoms. This dead fish look is just like, I finally met my goddess, and my goddess is unexpectedly kind and easy to talk to. But before I could confess to her, she already has a boyfriend, and when I finally find out that it's not her boyfriend, I'm relieved to be told that they're already husband and wife. Su Xinxing sighed and said casually, Puke wah. Monkey is vomiting blood. Medic, we don't have this class committee. Wait, brother, don't die. You haven't given me the 30G of porn we agreed on. Breathing is already out of options. Looks like we can only do CPR. As soon as he finished speaking, the class immediately returned to a pin-drop silence. Why don't you guys save me? The monkey roared as he shed tears of blood. The commotion lasted until the lunch break. Because there were still classes in the afternoon, Su Xinxing couldn't go back to the Ying apartments. However, spending the least amount of money to eat in the school cafeteria was one of the great pleasures of his life, so it wasn't unacceptable that he couldn't go back. Don't you think the hallways are too quiet today? The four-eyed class monitor muttered as he packed up his textbooks. Did the Chang Shaoxian pass by here? Only that extremely beautiful junior sister of his could create such an effect of complete silence when she passed by. Maybe the other classes have already finished their classes. Su Xinxing didn't comment. Then, the door of the classroom opened, revealing the red and white clothes outside. The entire classroom was silent for a moment, and then the students began to whisper to each other. It's a witch. There's actually someone who wears this kind of clothing on a daily basis. But why does it feel so fitting? What a beauty! Is she a student of our school? I haven't seen her before. Is she looking for someone? The girl's gaze swept through the crowd and landed on Su Xinxing, whose mouth was twitching incessantly. She revealed a brilliant smile. Lord Xinxing, I brought you a bento. Everyone was in an uproar. Before Su Xinxing could think about how to respond, Monkey behind him had already strangled his neck. Is it you? Asahi girl's beloved wife's bento was made for you. When he thought of how he had to teach the young girl how to please boys while his heart was bleeding yesterday, Monkey couldn't help but be filled with killing intent. Of course, it was completely useless to Su Xinxing. Because he was afraid of hurting the monkey, he did not dare to struggle. He could only use the monkey as a necklace and stand up. But when he reached this step, Monkey let go of his hand. Aren't you coming with us? Su Xinxing turned around and asked curiously. Go your ass. I'm not going to look for trouble. Monkey recalled the serious expression on the girl's face when she was taking notes yesterday. He felt that since she was so serious about making the bento, he couldn't ruin her good intentions. Therefore, although he was depressed, he didn't really intend to interfere. Is it an illusion? I keep feeling that the girl is drooling while looking at the two of you. The four-eyed class monitor said hesitantly in a low voice. That shouldn't be an illusion. Unfortunately, after interacting with each other for the past few days, Su Xinxing understood that this Asahi Sakurakanji classmate was an out-and-out rotten girl and had no interest in normal male and female relationships at all. Thinking of this, Su Xinxing couldn't help but look at Monkey with a bit of pity. So pitiful. The love ended before it even started. Is this the so-called defeat before the battle? Parting line. After finding a place to lay out a picnic cloth in the mountains behind Jiangjin, Su Xinxing and Asahi Sakurakanji sat on the ground and began to eat their bento. To be honest, Miss Witch's culinary skills were a little worse than Su Xinxing's, probably at the level of an ordinary family's home-cooked food. However, the bento was obviously better than Su Xinxing's because Su Xinxing basically knew celestial cuisine, which was the type of food that was greatly reduced when it was cold. The two ate in silence. In the end, Su Xinxing couldn't help but ask, "Why do you want me to go? In fact, as long as we think of a way and have some tricks up our sleeves, we might be able to hold on until the next god takes office, right?" This matter started from the day before yesterday. After driving the people from the Special Case Investigation Team out of Sakura apartment, Su Xinxing received a call from Xiao Jingyi, but it was Su Feng on the other end of the phone. Su Feng also told Su Xinxing their real purpose, letting Su Xinxing be the mascot. I mean the god of the shrine. Of course, it wasn't for the sake of the friendship between the two countries, but because Fusong would pay a corresponding reward. The reward was a royal seal called the Zhenchuan Seal, which was a magic treasure that was lost in the War of the Celestial Empire. At this time, the seal was placed in the White Bell Shrine to suppress the dry well. This was also the reason why Asahi Sakura Kanji, as a witch, could come to Jiangjin regardless of the abnormality of the dry well. However, the magic treasure without an owner had limited effectiveness and couldn't last for too long, so Su Xinxing's cooperation was needed. It was also worth mentioning that the seal seemed to be effective in dealing with the leakage of spiritual veins. Su Feng had already discussed with the higher-ups, and if they could really get their hands on it, they would place the seal in Jiangjin to stabilize the spiritual veins. This was also what Su Xinxing was struggling with recently. If he didn't go, he would feel guilty. If he went, he really couldn't accept cross-dressing, because the next god is too young. If it's possible, we plan to let her learn the behavior and unique temperament of a god from you. The girl whispered, "My behavior is no different from that of an ordinary person. What kind of unique temperament does a god have?" Su Xinxing asked curiously. "Oh, the feeling of being superior. Look, humans are like garbage." Something like that? Ah, I also like that animation very much. Chapter 70. Can Amiko watch anime? Su Xinxing asked as he swallowed the Vienna sausage that had been cut into the shape of an octopus. The former Minatasama. The girl answered subconsciously, but for some reason, she became depressed. The goddess Sama I served once secretly took me to a video store to rent a shrine to watch anime. Oh, that doesn't sound like something a god would do. Although it's a little rude, I don't think working in a small food store is something a god would do. The girl's rare, forceful words surprised Su Xinxing. He immediately realized that she was angry because he had said something bad about the former goddess Sama. To be honest, Su Xinxing felt that such a girl looked much more natural. Although her lifeless doll-like appearance was exquisite and quiet, it wasn't to his liking. "Do you have a good relationship with the former goddess Sama?" So he tried to start a new conversation. "I was raised by Minatsasoma." The girl hesitated for a moment before slowly answering Su Xinxing. It said that the former Miko of the White Bell Shrine had just fallen ill and was unable to continue her duties as a Miko. Inyang Sherdao was looking for a suitable candidate, and I was abandoned at the torii of the White Bell Shrine at that time. Minatsasama personally carried me back to the shrine and began taking care of me. After discovering that I had psionic power potential, she directly made me the successor of the White Bell Shrine's Miko. I heard that there were many voices of opposition in Inyang Shirtao at that time, but Minatsasama ignored them and only took care of me at the shrine alone. "Kamisama, can you see what's there?" Suddenly, the girl pointed at a cypress tree not far away and asked softly. Su Xinxing looked in the direction she was pointing at and saw a ferret-like creature with green fur sneakily poking its head out. But when it saw Su Xinxing looking at it, it immediately dove into the trees and quickly disappeared. How rare. There's actually a weasel in Jiangjin. Su Xinxing was surprised, although the color of its fur was a little off. "Actually, I can't see that." At this time, the girl hugged her knees and forced a smile. "My psionic power is very weak. It's even between having and not having it at a very ambiguous level. It's fine if it's someone like Minatsasama who deliberately reveals her body to me. But for ordinary demons, I can only vaguely see a blurry shadow at most." Inyang Shirtao sent people to the shrine several times over because of this matter, hoping that Minatsasama could replace me with a more capable Miko. But it's because most people can't see Minatsasama. There's quite a bit. Well, it's because most people can't see Minatasuma. That's and even the various commercial streets. Of that time, of the time, that be I, that time. Yama's Mion's Yama, es Yama, Sesmon, es her name, is Yukumo. She's one of Izumos incarnations. She corresponds to Tsukuyami in Takamagara and is the moon goddess. Asahi Sakura Kanji's expression was full of reverence. She's a very gentle and amazing person. It's said that she's the only god who's lived in the White Bell Shrine for more than 100 years. Oh, the other gods didn't stay for long? Su Shinshing, who had heard something else from Asahi Sakura Kanji's words, continued to ask. Yes, it's because the dried well where the great demon is sealed will emit foul air. Although the gods have the ability to purify the foul air to a certain extent, most of the gods are spirits. They are more likely to be eroded by the foul air than humans with physical bodies. The longer they stay near the dry well, the greater the impact of the foul air on their bodies. So many gods don't stay in the White Bell Shrine for too long. As if afraid of scaring Su Shinshing, the girl hurriedly added, "But Kami-sama, you have a physical body, so the foul air's ability to invade you is not strong. And I heard that you can also make jewelry that can resist the foul air, so don't worry about it." She should be talking about Xiao Jingyi's 50-cent bracelet +1 and Feng Xiaoqing's thousands of gold necklace +1. Su Shinshing thought silently in his heart. Indeed, you really didn't care about the foul air. No matter how strong the foul air was, could it be stronger than the various radiation of the interstellar weapons in Centaurus? After all, Su Shinshing was a man who could run naked in space after a war, because his clothes were accidentally burned when he fell into a star. In that case, why did she leave the shrine? Sorry. After asking this, Su Shinshing realized that he seemed to be too careless. Since the foul air could corrode a god's body, the reason why she left was most likely because the corrosive effect had reached its limit. This matter must have been a big blow to the girl who regarded the god as her mother. Now, he casually said it was undoubtedly rubbing salt in her wound. "No, it's fine. You don't need to apologize," the girl said with a wry smile. She hesitated for a moment before continuing, "Actually, I'm not sure why Minami-sama left the shrine. It's as though she suddenly vanished. From one day onwards, she never appeared again. If it was a Miko with a stronger psionic power, they might be able to discover some clues, but at this point, the girl could no longer continue. She held back her sadness, her face full of hatred for her powerlessness. Her eyes were filled with tears as if she would cry at any time. Su Shinshing sighed silently and stroked the girl's hair as a comfort. Then, he folded the empty lunchbox again. I'll clean this up," the girl sniffed and said with a nasal voice. "I'll return it to you after I wash it." Su Shinshing put away the lunchbox without a care. He stood up, patted the grass off his body, and took 2 steps toward the classroom for his afternoon class. Then, he stopped and said slowly, "I'll say this first. I won't agree to go to Japan just because of a tragic story. You better not have any strange expectations." "Yes, I understand." The girl wiped her eyes and once again revealed her standard smile. "Thank you for listening to my complaints. I feel a lot better after saying everything." "Oomph." Su Shinshing snorted and quickly left, leaving the girl staring at his back. After a long time, a summer breeze blew across the lawn. The girl tucked her hair behind her ear and said softly, "He's a good person." Chapter 71. As soon as class was over, Su Shinshing quickly left the classroom before he was surrounded by other male classmates, mainly single dog groups, to interrogate Asahi Sakura Kanji about his relationship with him. He easily got rid of his pursuers and returned to Sakura apartment. Emoli had already finished school. She had changed into a loose, long-sleeved shirt and was lying on the sofa, swinging her white legs. The hairband on her blonde hair had already been taken off, and her long hair was like a golden shawl draped over her shoulders and fell onto the sofa. She was humming an unknown anime song while nibbling on the scallops and reading the manga she borrowed from the Goddess of Earth. She was completely unaware that Su Shinshing had already returned. "Did you do your homework?" Su Shinxing took away her manga and asked with a straight face. I ordered it and finished it tomorrow morning. Emily answered with a pout. You'll already be in school by then. Friends mean sharing. Don't specifically copy. How much do you hate doing homework? Su Shinxing couldn't help but complain. It seemed that he had to find a chance to stop Shui Yingying from spoiling Emily so much. But then again, when did their relationship become so good? He remembered that the last time they came to his house for dinner, they weren't even friends, and Shui Yingying's memory of being kidnapped should have been erased by now. While Su Shinxing wasn't paying attention, Emily, who was sitting on the sofa like a duck, suddenly jumped up and tried to take back the manga, but Su Shinxing subconsciously dodged. Gulyalu. Emily made a sound like a puppy and then bit at Su Shinxing's hand. Hey, don't bite. Su Shinxing hurriedly raised his hand to dodge Mo Li's teeth, took 2 steps back, and then helplessly put the manga on top of Mo Li's head. Forget it. You could do whatever you want with homework. Just don't let the teacher find me again. Mo Li held his hands flat to keep his balance and didn't let the book on his head fall down. Oh, eggs. There's some leftover braised meat from yesterday. Wow, is this cabbage still edible? Su Shinxing opened the refrigerator and looked at the stock inside. While thinking about the dishes for dinner, he asked Emily, by the way, have you taken a shower? Not yet. After having enough fun, Emily removed the manga from his head and looked expectantly at Su Shinxing, who was checking the inventory in the fridge. What do we have for dinner? Fried rice, I guess. Su Shinxing said uncertainly. Then he poked his head out of the fridge and said, Go take a shower first. I refuse. Overruled. Gulyalu. This girl's resistance today was unexpectedly fierce, although she didn't usually like to bathe. Stop fooling around. You have PE class today, right? You must be dirty. Otherwise, why would you change so early? Su Shinxing was not frightened by the girl's teeth grinding. Instead, he suppressed it with an even stronger housewife's temperament. If you don't do as I say, Jasmine covered her ears as she sat on the sofa, pretending not to hear anything. But with the Demon King's hearing, he could hear Su Shinxing's words even if he covered his ears with both hands. The girl didn't care about Su Shinxing's threat at all. If he didn't let her use the computer, she could go to Earth God Lowly to play. If he didn't let her eat snacks, she could get them from Shui Yingying. Even if Su Shinxing used violence to force her to take a shower, she could still escape if she struggled with her life. Unless Su Shinxing ignored the safety of the Earth and seriously tried to catch her. The latter wasn't good at searching, so she just had to hide carefully. She had a chance of winning. The current Emily was invulnerable. The little girl was full of confidence in her resistance plan. Yes, although she was defeated by Su Shinxing, who was the savior of the world, she was no longer the same person. This time, she absolutely had to. I'll put a lot of green peppers in every meal you eat. I'm going to take a shower. The Demon King gave in. Our savior defeated the Demon King once again. In short, Emily took a change of clothes and staggered toward the bathroom, looking listless. Suddenly, as if she thought of something, she ran to the kitchen and pulled the corner of Su Shinxing's clothes, who was about to cut the cabbage into shreds. Hot spring, I want to soak in it today. Hot spring, that's really sudden. What's wrong? Su Shinxing handed the kitchen knife to the ghost spirit floating on the side. After instructing it to continue cutting the cabbage, he wiped his hands on the apron and took it off. I haven't soaked in it for a long time. I miss it. Emily continued to be expressionless and answered concisely. Are you angry, Emily? I was born with facial paralysis. Liar. This girl's facial expressions were obviously very interesting. However, Su Shinxing decided not to expose her. Speaking of which, we haven't been to the hot spring since Qin Xingyin came here. Since this is a rare opportunity, let's go. As mentioned before, Sakura Apartments actually had its own hot spring in the basement. However, the temperature of the hot spring was extremely high. If an egg was put in, it wouldn't be a hot spring egg, but a boiled egg. In addition, it could provide natural heating service for Sakura Apartments in winter. In summer, in order to prevent the temperature in the apartment from rising further, Emily basically used a barrier to separate the hot spring from the main body of the apartment. However, if Emily wanted to break the barrier, she needed to draw magic power from Su Shinxing. Therefore, she needed Su Xinxing's permission to soak in the hot spring in summer. After Qin Xingyin came to Sakura Apartments, the two of them basically didn't go to the hot spring. After all, Qin Xingyin's body was only slightly stronger than an ordinary person when she didn't use her cultivation method. She probably couldn't withstand the temperature of the underground hot spring in Sakura Apartments. Today, Qin Xingyin had a lot of classes scheduled. In addition, for some reason, she had to study at night, so she would come back later. Therefore, Immerse suggested that they go to the hot spring now. After the barrier was broken, Su Xinxing, who only had a bath towel wrapped around his lower body, came to the hot spring room. Then, she carefully sank her body into the boiling hot spring. Because of the polar protection, the extreme temperature of the natural world were almost unable to hurt Su Xinxing. Even this hot spring, which had the same temperature as boiling water, was only slightly hot to him. As for Immerse, who had the body of a Demon King, it didn't matter. After all, the bathrooms in the Demon King city in another world were lava pools. Clang clang. Immerse, who had changed his clothes, suddenly walked in from outside, causing Su Xinxing to almost choke on the hot water. It wasn't because of Immerse's appearance that he was scared. Before, the two of them had taken a bath together, so it wasn't rare for them to go to the hot spring together. It was just that the navy blue swimsuit Immerse was wearing now made Su Xinxing a little surprised. "Cough, where did you get this swimsuit from?" he asked curiously. "I don't know. It suddenly appeared in my room." Immerse answered honestly. "Why do I feel like it's a little familiar?" Su Xinxing touched his chin. He seemed to have seen this swimsuit somewhere recently. Just as he was about to think of something, the phone that he put on the plastic bag and put next to the hot spring rang. The caller ID showed that it was Xiao Jingyi. However, after he picked up the phone, he found that it was Su Feng on the other side of the phone. "Why is it you again? By the way, can't you use your phone to call me?" "I did, but I don't know why I can't get through." Su Feng answered helplessly. "Ah, speaking of which, it seems like I put you on the blacklist. Hey, all right. Okay, why are you calling this time? It can't be that you're just complaining about not being able to get through the phone, right?" Su Xinxing said quickly. "Oh, I almost forgot. Is the witch from Japan with you now?" "All right. How is that possible?" Su Xinxing sighed. "Well, that's not good." On the other side of the phone, Su Feng faintly sighed. "What happened to her?" Su Xinxing frowned. "She didn't go back to the hotel we booked for her, and we can't contact her. In short, she's missing." "All right." Chapter 72. Missing. Su Xinxing was taken aback. "Yes, she didn't come back after going to Jiangjin University. Although I've already asked Xiao Jingyi and Feng Xiaoqing to look for her, I'm afraid it won't be that easy to find her." After going to Jiangjin University, that is to say, after talking to me, Su Xinxing felt a little complicated in his heart. However, he quickly calmed down and began to think about the possibility of Miss Witch's disappearance. Finally, a weasel-like creature flashed through his mind. Monsters would attack humans. Although there weren't many monsters that ate humans, because of the concept of blood and flesh, even some omnivorous monsters would prey on humans to obtain the unique spirituality of humans to help with their cultivation. This was also why monsters, especially animal monsters, often appeared in the form of villains in various ancient stories. In addition, humans with spiritual power talent were even better snacks for monsters and had a considerable degree of attraction. Originally, he thought that it was enough for him and Su Feng to stay in Jiangjin to maintain the order of the inner world. But could there be a rash monster that would do such a thing? Su Xinxing hurriedly described the appearance of the weasel-like creature to the mobile phone. After a few seconds of silence, the other party said, "Because ordinary people can't see it, it can almost negate the possibility that the creature is a real animal that opened its spiritual cavity and became a spirit. In addition, it can appear in the daytime, so it shouldn't be a creature's soul, so it should be a natural spirit beast." According to your description, in my impression, there's only one kind of spirit beast like that, wind raccoon. What kind of thing is that? Su Xinxing frowned and then asked, "If possible, just get to the point." "Simply put, it's a creature that is difficult to kill, and even if it dies, as long as there is wind in its mouth, it will immediately resurrect. Immortality, that's not difficult to deal with. Su Xinxing nodded imperceptibly. Those who had the ability of immortality but died under his sword could have formed a reinforced company a long time ago. If it's just an ordinary wind raccoon, then it's easy to deal with. After all, this kind of spirit beast basically doesn't prey on humans. The problem is that there's a very special race of wind raccoons. Their bodies have patterns that look like ancient seals, so they're also called literary raccoons. Wen Li, on the other hand, was Mountain Ghost attendant. Mountain Ghost? I remember that in the Chu Ci Jogu, it's a type of deity. It's harmless to humans, right? That is indeed the case in the literature of the Celestial Empire. However, in Fusong, the mountain ghost means a kind of monster that is difficult to distinguish between good and evil. It is also called the mountain witch or mountain spirit. Although it might be due to different documents, I don't think we should be too optimistic about the current situation. Hey, are you still listening? Su Xinxing had already hung up the phone. Then, he poked Mo Li's head, who had sunk into the hot spring and was blowing bubbles like a crab. Sorry, Mo Li, I need your help. Mo Li hugged his knees and fell into the hot spring, ignoring Su Xinxing's words. Are you still angry about what happened just now? Su Xinxing could only sigh. He came out of the hot spring, ran to his room, and quickly changed his clothes. At the same time, he also took the time to call Qin Xingyan, who was studying in the evening at Jiangjin University. The latter used a camouflage spell and soon returned to Sakura apartment on his flying sword with a whoosh. Su Xinxing, who had already changed his clothes, briefly told the other party what had happened. I see. It's because you abandoned her that the witch was taken away by a monster, right? What exactly went wrong? Why did the explanation just now give you such a misconception? Everything. Then I really don't understand the way you Bailu Temple people think. While having a meaningless conversation, the two of them rushed back to Jiangjin University under the cover of the night. That's not right. I don't think I need to run back to Sakura apartment at all, right? Qin Xingyan, who had returned to school, suddenly realized. It's too late to complain now. Hurry up and help me find her. After dispersing his spirit ghosts and searching everywhere, Su Xinxing ran towards the back of the mountain without looking back. Why are you going to the back of the mountain? Qin Xingyan asked curiously. Because the enemy might be a mountain ghost, so the chances of it appearing on the mountain are higher, right? Su Xinxing answered casually. Well, I can't refute that. The female cultivator looked embarrassed. And even if we can't find the mountain ghost, we can still find the land god to help, right? I can almost hear the land god's sorrowful cries. Unfortunately, both of Su Xinxing's plans fell through. There were no traces of the mountain ghost in the back of the mountain, and the land god girl was not at home. During this time, he also called Su Feng, but the answer he received was that there was still no news of Miss Miko. The moon rose from the east, and the silver moonlight added a mysterious atmosphere to Jiangjin. However, Su Xinxing did not have the luxury to enjoy such a beautiful scenery. To be honest, Asahi Sakura Kanji's safety could not be guaranteed. Moreover, the longer this dragged on, the lower her chances of survival would be. Just when Su Xinxing was at a loss, he bumped into Monkey, who was passing by the campus and heading to the campus supermarket. Hey, you're not home yet. Monkey looked at Su Xinxing in shock and asked. There's something. By the way, Monkey, Su Xinxing asked without holding any hope. Did you see Sakura Kanji this afternoon? The one who came to find me at noon. Yes, I did. As expected, you didn't. Su Xinxing was halfway through his sentence when he realized that something was wrong. She didn't look too good, so I brought her to the infirmary. Monkey complained with some indignation. The healthcare teacher in the infirmary is so heartless. She's like Abbess Miju. She won't let me in and only allows the patient to rest inside. She's keeping a cat inside. Did you see a cat inside? Su Xinxing's eyes lit up. No, but I heard a cat or a small animal meowing. Monkey shook his head. If the meowing came from Wen Li, then Monkey could be considered a spiritual ability user with some talent, right? although he was relatively weak. Regardless, Su Xinxing still rushed to the infirmary with Qin Xingyan. The healthcare teacher that Monkey called Abbess Miju was not inside, but there were two people inside. One of them was Asahi Sakura Kanji. Su Xinxing knew the other person, but he had not spoken to her before. She's called Chang Xiaoxian, right? Even Qin Xingyan, who was focused on cultivation before he met Su Xinxing, had heard of her. She's the uncrowned campus belle of Jiangjin University. The two people who did not know each other and did not have any interactions were now chatting happily in the infirmary. No one knew what they were talking about. Seriously, what was I doing for half the night? Su Xinxing sat weakly on the lawn outside the window. However, even he did not notice that after he found that Asahi Sakura Kanji was fine, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 73. Since Qin Xingyan did not find any traces of monsters in the infirmary, and Su Xinxing was not interested in the conversation between the girls, after confirming that Miss Witch was fine, he went to the criminal police force to beat up the startled Su Feng. After that, he went home to eat and sleep. By the way, due to the sudden incident, the dinner that was supposed to be made after the hot spring was left unfinished. In the end, it was the ghost that finished it. Although Su Xinxing knew that there was no need to expect too much from a group of 5- or 6-year-old kids, when he saw the half-cooked strange fried rice, the corners of his eyes couldn't help but twitch. After discovering this, Emily snuck out of Sakura apartment. No one knew if he wanted to find Shui Yingying to eat, or if he wanted to harm Earth God Lowly. In short, after Su Xinxing finished the fried rice with a pale face, he could only hold his stomach and go back to sleep. Dividing line, this is probably a dream. Su Xinxing thought to himself as he looked at everything in front of him from a first-person perspective. Although he didn't know why, he had now become the caretaker of the Yakumo girl, Asahi Sakura Kanji. In front of him, a little girl who only reached his thigh was playing with a flower ball in front of the shrine alone. She looked a little lonely. Asahi, aren't you going to play with your classmates? As if he was watching a movie, his body couldn't help but speak. But the voice was gentle and soft like a woman's voice. I just want to be with Mami-sama. Little Asahi raised her little face and said stubbornly, the kids at school can't see Mami-sama, and they always laugh at me. This won't do, Asahi. He patted the little girl's head and said gently, the White Bell Shrine isn't everything to you. Your life should be more beautiful. Then he put the little girl on his knees and continued to stroke her little head. The young Asahi narrowed her eyes and showed a comfortable expression like a kitten. Asahi, you're so cute. You'll definitely have a lot of friends. I don't want any friends. Mami-sama is enough. Oh, why is this child so cute? Su Xinxing could feel that the original owner of this body was touched by little Asahi's innocent words. Oh, Yakumo-sama. What's up, Asahi? What's the meaning of Onichu? I saw this when I was cleaning Mami-sama's room. There's also the world's first love, romance of pure love, and so on. Well, it's still too early for Chaori, so he put on a straight face and said, that's why, Chaori, it's better for you to find friends of the same age to play with. Mami-sama, don't you want Asahi anymore? Of course not. If possible, I also want Asahi to be with me forever. Really? Asahi, I love Mami-sama the most. Yakumo loved Asahi Sakura Kanji the most. He wanted her to be his possession and be with him forever. Even if he had to split his godhood and make her his subordinate god, it wouldn't be a problem for them to enter Takamijihara together. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that, because Asahi was the reincarnation of half of the soul of the guy in the well. Back then, Lord Sissa risked breaking the Tatsuka sword to cut off half of Asahi's soul, which greatly weakened Asahi's power. Only then did he have the opportunity to combine the power of Amaterasu and Izumo to seal Asahi in the dry well of the White Bell Mountain. He even pressed a huge rock into the well to prevent Asahi from escaping. But this wasn't foolproof. The severed half of the soul will be reincarnated and gradually get rid of the suppression of Susanu's divine power. At that time, it will instinctively approach the location of the other half of its soul. When the distance between the two halves is too close, the sealed half of the soul will break free and devour the other half of the soul, becoming a great demon that threatens the safety of Fuso. Yakumo realized this a long time ago. That's why she, as the incarnation of Tsukuyami, one of the three great gods of Fuso, infused with Izumo's divine power, had been guarding this place for so long. 6 years ago, when she found little Asahi in front of the shrine, she immediately became aware of Asahi's true identity. Even so, she adopted little Asahi, and in order to prevent the guy in the dry well from detecting Asahi's existence, she persistently placed layers of seals on Asahi's body. This was also the reason why Asahi, who was the reincarnation of a great demon, was so weak. However, the strength of the guy in the dry well was still beyond Yakumo's expectations. In just 10 years, the divine power she used to suppress the dry well was almost exhausted, and the seal under the dry well was even loosened. The seal on Asahi's body couldn't stop the transmission of divine power. If this continued, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold on for long. So in the end, Yakumo made a decision. She wasn't Tsukuyami herself, but just an incarnation. If she sent her existence back to Takamagara, she would be able to generate a tremendous amount of divine power. The only consequence was that from then on, there would no longer be a god named Yakumo in this world. Ah, Asai, my daughter, if you know this, please don't be sad for me, and don't blame yourself, because from now on, I will exist in Shiranui Shrine forever. Whether the sun rises in the east or the silver moon hangs high in the sky, I will watch your figure in the shrine and always bless you. In exchange, please fulfill my wish. No matter what the future is, Asahi Sakura Kanji must be happy and happy forever. In the end, I'm sorry for cultivating you into a Fujoshi. Dream End, Special Case Investigation Team Office. Oh, why did you suddenly change your mind? Su Feng, who had panda eyes, asked Su Shunxing in surprise, who was calmly drinking tea in front of him. Because there's no money. Su Shunxing honestly replied, if there's no way to make money faster, Mo Li will accompany me to eat the northwest wind. Then women's clothing. Su Feng's finger tapped on the tea table. Don't even think about it. Su Shunxing said firmly, you want to make money, but you don't want to wear women's clothing. I'm in a difficult position. Su Feng said with a smile. I've checked. The Shiranui Girls Academy is a private school for young ladies, right? Su Shunxing was already prepared. He methodically replied, in that case, I just need to disguise as a student's bodyguard. Anyway, as long as I have a reason to enter the school, the rest is not difficult. Now, where would a student let you be a bodyguard? Su Feng pretended to be in a difficult position. So Su Shunxing moved to the right, revealing Mo Li, who was obediently eating donuts with Shinjuku. Chapter 74. Private Huanghua Women's College. This was a school for nobles built around Mount Shiranui, funded by the Daiso Financial Group. Although there were also commoner students, the admission requirements for commoner students were extremely strict, so there were not many of them. Due to the restrictions of the admission conditions, the commoner students' academic performance was very good. Although it had not reached the point of polarization, there was always an insurmountable generation gap between them and the aristocratic daughters. Coupled with the difference in family background and the unique phenomenon of small groups, it could be said that the commoner students, who were in the minority, were always discriminated against to a certain extent in this school. But there were always exceptions, and Chihaya Fukuyama was a special case among special cases. Because of her beautiful appearance and unique temperament that was both cold and mysterious, she was the representative of the commoners. Together with the representative of the noble ladies, Mizuki Takamiya, she was known as the big sister of Huanghua. She was admired by most of the girls in Huanghua. However, at this moment, the big sister who carried the admiration of most of the girls in Huanghua Women's College was wearing sloppy sportswear and old-fashioned black-rimmed glasses. Her messy almond-colored hair was simply tied into a ponytail and hung in front of her chest. Her slender legs were curled up on the chair as she yawned and lowered her head to check the family's expenses and budget. If the noble ladies in the school saw this, they would probably immediately understand the reality of the world and the heartache of having their dreams shattered. This old man has thought of this for a long time. I've raised you to be such a two-faced person. I'm really sorry to your parents who entrusted you to this old man. A wizened old man sat on a shabby sofa. His gaze passed over the pornographic magazine in his hand and landed on Chihaya Fukuyama, who looked exactly like an otaku. He then pretended to cry. "So noisy, Grandpa." The girl half opened her dead fish eyes and glared at the old man. "Speaking of which, you secretly went to the video store to rent a lot of weird BDs without telling me, right?" The advancement of technology really makes this old man blush with shame. The old man's gaze drifted back to the pornographic magazine. "I really don't want to hear this from someone who is more familiar with Xbox 2 and PS5 than I am." The girl sighed helplessly. "It's always like this. It's very difficult for me to check the budget. Although I think it's useless to say anything. Can you be a little more careful not to read that kind of book in front of your granddaughter?" "My lovely granddaughter, are you going to deprive this poor old man of his last bit of pleasure?" The old man squeezed out a few drops of tears. "I just hope that before you read it, your lovely granddaughter is still here." And what the R18 in the upper right corner of the book means. The girl turned her head and continued to read the book, and was thinking about how to allocate next month's budget. "Chienzeo, if it weren't for the fact that you're about to become a god, you'd definitely be a good wife." Looking at the girl's slim figure, the old man couldn't help but sigh. "I don't have to worry about no one inheriting my coffee shop. It's a pity that there's one less good woman in this world." With a bang, the young girl slammed the pen in her hand on the table, giving the old man a fright. "I'm going to wash my face." Chihaya Fukuyama jumped down from the chair and quickly walked out of the room. Her footsteps slowed down when she arrived at the dimly lit corridor due to the setting sun. "It's not like I want to become that kind of thing." It was only then that she muttered softly. Although it was also said that the current human gods were the products of ghosts or other supernatural creatures that appeared in human form and were deified. In the literature, such as the Book of Sleeves, it referred to the ascension of a human to a god, or the existence of a half-human and half-god. Chihaya Fukuyama belonged to the latter category. It was said that her ancestors had a certain bloodline of the Hypachuan dragon god, so there were often people with spiritual power in their family. Chihaya Fukuyama was the rarest of them. She was a descendant who inherited the position of the dragon god to a certain extent. Even in the long history of the mountain family, there are only 2 people with this characteristic. Because the divine position had not been awakened when they were young, they did not realize that they had this kind of power. Many times, they would unconsciously cause some supernatural phenomena. Without the power to control the divine position, there was naturally no way to prevent these supernatural phenomena from happening, and these kinds of phenomena often led to bad consequences. For example, as the name suggested, the Hypachuan dragon god was the god of rivers and had a natural affinity with water. So when Chihaya Fukuyama got close to a water pipe, the pipe would burst easily. When she stood on a bridge, the water level would rise abnormally. When she accidentally touched a fire hydrant, the iron fire hydrant would be flushed into the sky by the water. It was because of these frequent occurrences that before the Yin-Yang hut found her, Chihaya Fukuyama was always regarded as a jinx. Not only was she isolated, even her biological parents almost abandoned her. If she hadn't opened a coffee shop and her grandfather, who had an independent source of income, hadn't found out earlier and forcefully taken custody of her, the little girl who was still in kindergarten at that time would have ended up in an orphanage. By the way, although they lived together, her grandfather did not seem to have encountered the trouble that Chihaya Fukuyama brought. According to the people in the Yin-Yang hut, although Chihaya Fukuyama's grandfather did not have any psionic powers, he seemed to be a kind person for 10 lifetimes. In short, he was extremely lucky and could completely offset the negative effects of Chihaya Fukuyama being a human god. But even so, her childhood experience still made Chienzeo's personality a little cold. Coupled with the fact that she was now a candidate for the god of life, she naturally had a kind of otherworldly temperament that surpassed human beings. She didn't have much contact with people anymore, and she had a sufficient sense of mystery. Therefore, it was understandable that those young ladies who hadn't experienced much of the world would yearn for her. After entering Phoenix Academy, the young lady also changed a little. For example, she made her first friend in life, Asahi Sakurakanji. Asahi Sakurakanji was the first to interact with her. Even though she treated him coldly, he was not discouraged and finally became friends. Of course, Asahi Sakurakanji insisted that Chihaya Fukuyama could become the god that she served, so she refused to call him friend. Speaking of her only friend, Chihaya Fukuyama could not help but feel worried. A week ago, Asahi Sakurakanji had taken leave due to some matters, but she did not expect that once she took leave, there would be no news of her for an entire week. She went to the shrine on White Bell Mountain, but could not find her. Even the god who usually drank tea and basked in the sun at the shrine was nowhere to be seen. Seriously, she said that she was going to serve me in the future, but in the end, she can't be found. After washing her face, Chihaya Fukuyama grumbled softly as she returned to the living room. In the end, she found that her grandfather was no longer inside. Perhaps he had returned to the coffee shop to continue working, and that extremely hot magazine was still left on the sofa. Seriously, she muttered softly. Just as she was about to tidy up, the doorbell rang from the door. Who is it? Chihaya rubbed his forehead in annoyance. Express delivery. Opening the door, there was a delivery man wearing a baseball cap outside. This is your express delivery. Please sign for it. After passing the receipt to Chihaya and stamping it, the delivery man left behind a large cardboard box and quickly drove away. Fresh food? Grandpa is really... What kind of rubbish did he buy on the internet again? Looking at the cardboard box with the word living on it, the young lady sighed helplessly. Chapter 75. The box was about a head shorter than Chihaya Fukuyama, and its width and thickness were only average. If one had to describe it, it looked like a coffin. What a bad association. Chihaya Fukuyama rubbed her forehead. Since Grandpa bought it, let him open it himself. Judging from its size, the box should be quite heavy. Although Chihaya Fukuyama was good at sports, her physical strength was only at the level of an ordinary girl. It would be bad if she couldn't lift the box and ended up crushing herself. The Fukuyama family's house was a commercial and residential house. The front door of the house was used as a coffee shop, and the back was where Chihaya and her grandpa lived. Just as Chihaya was about to walk through the house to find her grandpa, the box suddenly shook. The girl was frightened and took a step back. She cautiously kept a certain distance from the box and carefully looked at it. As if to prove that she wasn't mistaken, the box shook again. Then, as if there was some small animal inside, the box started to sway left and right. Just as Chihaya was at a loss of what to do, the box finally lost its balance and fell to the ground with a thud. Then, it completely quieted down. Could it be that the creature label doesn't mean fresh product but living thing? Chihaya muttered to herself. As a candidate for the human god, she naturally knew that there were many incredible creatures in this world. Although she hadn't seen them with her own eyes, it didn't stop her from being wary of this box of unknown origin. If she left it alone, would it starve to death? She walked around the box, but it didn't move at all. Chihaya couldn't help but feel a little confused. So she carefully approached the box and carefully looked at the label on it. She found that not only was there a custom stamp, there's also a label full of Chinese characters. Is this from Huaxia? Wait, she carefully looked at the label full of Chinese characters. Although she couldn't understand the meaning of many of the words, she understood the name on it. Asahi Sakurakanji. Did Asahi send this to me? As one of her few friends, Chihaya trusted Asahi quite a lot. So she took out a kitchen knife from the house. Aside from cutting the tape, it could also be used for self-defense. She then gulped and opened the box lying on the ground. Inside was a blonde lowly with 2 ponytails in the posture of underscore, smiley face, angle underscore. But the little girl's face looked haggard, and she seemed to be muttering things like, I've been cheated, this is not a trip, without landlord, I'm going to die, and so on. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Should I help her up? Why is in the box's hand? Could it be that Zhaori went to China to become a human trafficker? A mess of thoughts occupied Chahaya's mind. Except for the time when she found out that she was a human god candidate, this was probably the most troublesome situation she had ever encountered in her life. Then, Chahaya noticed that something was wrong. The little girl wasn't speaking Japanese, but she could understand it. Obviously, this wasn't an ability that a normal creature could have. She was a supernatural creature. She guessed right. Unlike Su Xinxing's blessing of all races, which had a similar effect to language proficiency, Jasmine herself did not have the ability to learn the languages of other races. From the beginning to the end, Emoli had been speaking the language of her hometown. But as the Demon King who had conquered many worlds, she had the ability to let others understand her language, the language of all races. She wasn't more mysterious than Emoli. Her combat power wasn't more powerful than Emoli, and her subordinates weren't more powerful than Emoli. Anyone who didn't meet any of these three conditions would be considered a target of dominance. In this case, Emoli's language was on the same level as the language of the god, or Demon King, they believed in. She could ignore the language barrier and reach the target's heart. This was one of the reasons why the Demon King's language could easily confuse people. By the way, this ability was usually sealed together with Emoli's magic. This time, there was no time for her to learn Japanese from scratch, so Su Xinxing undid a little bit of the seal and let her take back this ability. If Chahaya didn't have a certain degree of divine status and was immune to the language of gods, she probably wouldn't have noticed the fact that Emoli was speaking another language. No matter what, this girl was sent here by Asai, so it was better to entertain her. After a moment of mental struggle, Chihaya decided to continue trusting her only friend. Do you want to eat something? Chihaya tried asking. You haven't eaten or drunk in a long time, right? After all, Huaxia was quite far from here. Although Chihaya hadn't left the country before, it would take at least 2 or 3 days for such a large box to go through customs, right? Although the fact that he wasn't detained at customs was still quite miraculous. Eat something. Hearing Qianzeo's words, the blonde lowly regained some spirit. She raised her head and looked at Qianzeo. That pitiful look made Qianzeo, who was quite cold in front of outsiders, couldn't help but feel her heart soften. In the end, she helped the little girl into the house and cooked some egg porridge for her. The blonde lowly held a small spoon and ate the egg porridge mouthful by mouthful. But her mental state was still a little weak. She looked sickly and dispirited. Chihaya felt that it might be because she had been stuffed in the box for a long time. Putting himself in her shoes, if he was stuffed in such a small and dark space, unable to speak or move, unable to even satisfy his physiological needs, his mental state wouldn't be much better. Thinking of this, Chihaya couldn't help but sympathize with this little girl even more. I'm Chihaya Fukuyama. What's your name? Dollar? Sai? Oh. The girl subconsciously spat out a series of incomprehensible syllables. It could even be said that it was difficult for a human's vocal cords to produce. Then she seemed to have thought of something and repeated, Emoli. Emoli? Not a bad name. Chihaya tried to praise her. If the girls in Phoenix Academy heard Chihaya praising their names, they would probably faint from happiness, right? However, Jasmine was completely unmoved by this. This made Chihaya feel a little awkward. Surely it was better to let grandfather communicate with her. Although Chihaya's grandfather was a little wretched, this description was actually quite reserved, but he was surprisingly good at communicating with people. Thank you for your hospitality. Just as Chihaya was thinking, Emoli had already finished her egg porridge. She put down her chopsticks and said seriously, I will repay you. Chapter 76. Although Chihaya Fukuyama did not expect the other party to do something as dramatic as a crane repaying her kindness, but after saying that she would repay him, that little fellow disappeared in a blink of an eye. Even after searching the entire house, he still could not find her, so he guessed that she had already left. Could it be an existence like Shinji? In the end, the puzzled Qianzeo could only keep her suspicions to herself. The next morning, the breakfast in the house deep in the mountains was not cooked. nor was there any cloth or other things like that. Looks like that little fellow was indeed not around anymore. This made Chahaya have a subtle feeling that he had been cheated. Shaking her head, she tossed that feeling to the back of her mind. Using her fastest speed, she prepared her usual Japanese breakfast. She changed her old-fashioned black-rimmed glasses into contact lenses, combed her long almond-colored hair, and changed into her school uniform. After tidying up her appearance, she shouted softly, "I'm going out," and left the house. Although Phoenix Academy had its own student residences, but firstly, the luxurious European-styled residence was rather expensive, and if he had to fork out this amount of money, the remote mountains family would be unable to make ends meet. Chahaya had no interest in experiencing the remote mountains family affairs kind of plot. Secondly, it was already very tiring to maintain the image of a top student in school. If he were to stay in the student residences, even after school, he would not be able to remove his mask. Looking at it this way, it was indeed more relaxing to stay at home. Phoenix Academy was situated on a small island and was built along the White Bell Mountain. Adding on to the Western style of Rococo architecture, it would give people the misconception that they had come to another country. The city's trams did not lead directly to Phoenix Academy, but there was a tram stop in front of a bridge that looked like the London Tower Bridge. After alighting from there would be a school bus that would pick you up. All in all, Chihaya Fukuyama's school journey required one to first take the tram and then transfer to the school bus before reaching Phoenix Academy. And Fusang's trams were famous for producing a certain kind of creature that was named after a wolf. Although she had never met one before, but today Chihaya felt that someone was caressing her buttocks in a crowded carriage. She turned around and glared fiercely at the person behind her. The other party was a very inconspicuous young man. He was wearing a t-shirt that was a little yellow because it had been washed too many times, and the lower half of his body was wearing a pair of Hawaiian beach pants that didn't look like a decent person's. At this moment, the hedgehog-headed young man was holding an old flip phone in his right hand and looking at Chihaya innocently. Feeling that the warning was enough, Chihaya turned around and looked at the portable vocabulary book in his hand again, silently memorizing the English words. Not long after, the feeling of being caressed came again. Her hand that was holding the vocabulary book trembled. She tried to hold it in for a moment, and then suddenly turned around. The passerby youth obviously didn't expect her to suddenly do this. He still kept his body leaning forward, his face slightly lowered, as if he was studying the posture of the girl's buttocks. He trembled as he raised his head, only to see the girl's cold gaze and almost expressionless face. "Wait, actually you've misunderstood." The other party hurriedly waved his hand, trying to explain himself. "Mister," Chihaya looked at him with disdain and took out her phone. "If you have anything to say, please go to the police station and slowly tell it to the police." Dividing line. Facing the angry girl, Su Xinxing felt that this was the most disadvantageous situation he had ever been in since he became the world savior. Even when he was fighting with the Demon King, he wasn't that weak. The story started a few minutes ago. Due to the Super Administrative Office's lack of funds, although Su Xinxing entered the country by air, Immerse was sent here by mail. Mail category was pet. After getting off the plane, Su Xinxing originally wanted to go to the house where Immerse was supposed to stay, but the people from Enyang Liao found Su Xinxing and told him that Immerse had already gone to Phoenix Academy. Therefore, Su Xinxing, who didn't get a ride on the Enyang Liao bus, could only take the tram to Phoenix Academy. So far, everything had been going smoothly. But as the number of people in the tram gradually increased, the distance between him and the girl in front of him gradually shortened. When the distance between them was so short that they could touch each other with just a stretch of their hands, something unexpected happened. The fragment of the deity tablet that was bounced off by Yin Lin and had been drifting around Su Xinxing suddenly stuck to the girl in front of him, and it just so happened that it stuck to her, but after looking at her, but for a while, Su Xinxing took out his phone. Because of the cost of international long-distance calls, he hesitated for a long time, but in the end, he still sent a message to Qin Xingyan. What if the deity tablet entered her, but waiting online, it's quite urgent. After a while, the other party replied, "Can you not send such sexual harassment messages when I'm in class?" Su Shenxing tried to send a few more messages to explain himself, but he didn't receive a reply. So he finally sadly confirmed that he seemed to have been blacklisted by the other party. No matter what, Su Shenxing wouldn't let the fragment of the deity tablet inexplicably enter the body of an ordinary person, putting aside whether those old guys in the Bailu temple would be so angry that they would vomit blood and die if they found out that the deity tablet they regarded as a treasure was so attached to someone else's, but just the fact that an ordinary person couldn't withstand the explosion of the deity tablets. But, ahem, let me say the power of the deity tablet made Su Shenxing unable to ignore it. Of course, as an idiot in magic, it was too difficult for Su Shenxing to use magic or spells to solve the current situation, so he could only try to pull off the deity tablet stuck to the girls, but with his hands. But it seemed that not only was the effect not very good, even he himself was regarded as a pervert. God pity him, his hands didn't even touch the girl's private parts. It was all an illusion caused by the deity tablet squirming there. But how on earth could he explain the reason for this to an ordinary person? Su Shenxing remained silent for a moment, and finally, under the other party's bone-chilling gaze, he said seriously, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in people of your age." He grinned and gave a thumbs up, "Because I'm a lullicon." "Hello, is this the police station?" The other party didn't hesitate to call the police. Not good. If he was caught by the police and sent back to his country, it would become a stain that he would never be able to wash off. He would definitely be mocked to death by Su Feng and Xiao Jingyi, although there was still a distance to Phoenix Academy, but it wasn't the time to hesitate. So he straightforwardly opened the window of the tram and shouted "Sarah," and jumped out of the window. Fortunately, this tram model was slightly older. If it was a fully enclosed carriage, then Su Shenxing could only use his head to smash open the window. "Wait, it's dangerous." The young lady was shocked by his actions and hurriedly ran to the window, but Su Shenxing's figure had already disappeared. Chapter 77. A champagne-colored Rolls-Royce Phantom was quietly driving on the road. Mizuki Takamiya leaned on the leather sofa at the back of the car, taking a nap. Although she was considered a resident student, but as she had already started to take over part of her family's business, she often needed to go out to handle various matters, so occasionally she would stay outside the school. Regarding this point, Phoenix Academy had also turned a blind eye to it on account of Fei Gong family. Last night, this young miss of Fei Gong family had attended a high society banquet, chatting and laughing with various businessmen and politicians. After leaving the banquet, she immediately flew to Okinawa, where she and the Daiso Financial Group's representative schemed, and after signing a series of cooperation agreements. Finally, she took the Fei Gong family's private jet back to Bailing County and took a car back to Phoenix Academy. Other than the short rest on the plane, Mizuki Takamiya had not slept well for almost the entire night. But this was already considered a common occurrence. After agreeing to her father's conditions, she was already aware of it. Fei Gong family was an old family in Fusang, and it was said that there were already traces of them being active during the shogunate era. Whether this legend was true or false, but it was true that since the Taisho era, Fei Gong family had occupied a considerable portion of Fusang's business world. However, since the beginning of the Showa period, Fusang's business world had blossomed. In addition, the people who were in charge of the imperial concubines family were the older generation, which made this once glorious family on the verge of collapse. Fortunately, Mizuki Takamiya's father suddenly emerged and directly sent those old fellows who had monopolized power to the old people's home and boldly and decisively carried out reforms in Fei Gong family, which caused this unstable family to once again settle down. Without a doubt, Mizuki Takamiya's father, who had done all this, was a man with an iron fist and a firm will. Once he had decided on something, no one could change it, even if it was his only daughter, Mizuki Takamiya. At the same time, he was also the most standard businessman. It's fine if you don't want to marry, but you have to show value that exceeds the benefits that the marriage can bring. Mizuki Takamiya felt that he would never forget the way he looked at him, as if he was sizing up an item. After that, the man who was her father handed over some of the family business to the concubine, Gongrueishi. In order to respond to the other party's expectations, Rueishi tried her best to do everything to the best of her ability. That was why she had become who she was now, the genius girl that everyone praised, the business genius that her employees admired, and the big sister in the eyes of her classmates. It's not enough. Mizuki Takamiya sighed softly. He knew that this alone was not enough to make his iron-willed father see him in a different light. Was it really a good idea to continue like this? Why was he working so hard and studying so hard? Was there any meaning to it? Perhaps he would be happier if he married into a better family? However, deep in the girl's heart, there was always a stubborn thought that made her reject these weak thoughts. She wouldn't grumble in vain. Rather than having that time, she might as well grab the opportunity to have a good rest. By the time they reached Phoenix Academy, she would once again be able to display her big sister attitude in front of everyone. Big sister. Every time this happened, Rueishi would always subconsciously think of another girl who was called Big Sister by the Academy students. Different from her, although Chihaya Fukuyama was always cold, but he always had a kind of leisurely atmosphere, just like a kitten that liked to take a stroll. Even if he was cold and indifferent to people, he would still give people a feeling of healing. Probably only a commoner would be able to nurture such a miraculous temperament. Sometimes Mizuki Takamiya envied Chihaya Fukuyama, and Chihaya Fukuyama was one of the few people that she could talk to. Different from others, Chihaya would never try to curry favor with her, nor would he have the slightest gap because of her status or anything else. If it had to be said, it was probably that cold look which made people feel that it was hard to get close to him. But after interacting with Chihaya Fukuyama for a long time, one would be able to feel that under that cold exterior, there was still a kind heart. Just as Mizuki Takamiya's imagination was running wild and her thoughts were about to sink into dreamland, a violent collision and a loud bang that caused her ears to ring pulled the young lady back to reality. Not knowing when, a van suddenly rushed out from the fork in the road, ignoring the traffic lights, and fiercely crashed into the front side of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. Thanks to the safety features brought about by its high price, the Rolls-Royce Phantom wasn't directly destroyed by the collision. It was only knocked to one side, and finally, like an arrow, it plunged into the side of the road building. Woo! The pain on her calf made the frightened Mizuki Takamiya regain her senses. She lightly touched the wound and judged that the bone was fine. It should only be a scratch or contusion. From the back seat, she could see that the airbag on the driver's side popped out normally. She called out twice, but the driver didn't respond. She didn't know if he fainted or something else. The girl took a deep breath and desperately tried to calm herself down. A traffic accident? No. She felt that the van's appearance was a bit strange. The target is here. A strange man's voice faintly came from outside the window. Target? The feeling of uneasiness in the girl's heart grew stronger and stronger. She wanted to open the door and leave this place as soon as possible, but the door was a bit deformed, so it was very difficult to open it. In addition, the girl's current position made it difficult for her to open the door. Suddenly, the door was pulled open from the outside. Then the other person grabbed Mizuki Takamiya's arm and violently dragged her out of the car. Then several pairs of hands carried her in a direction. The girl's vision lit up. It seemed that she had finally left the half-collapsed building. However, the scene in front of her made her heart sink to the bottom. She was now in an alley. It looked like it was behind the building. There was a van parked at the end of the alley. The burly men around her didn't look like rescue personnel from the fire department or the police department. Kidnappers. In an instant, this word appeared in the girl's mind. Then, like a tidal wave, a huge wave of fear surged in her heart. Kidnappers generally wanted money. As the daughter of the Miyazaki family, it was understandable that she was targeted. The problem was that she knew that her father was the kind of person who would never compromise with criminals. Since that was the case, she was likely to become a punching bag for the criminals. She was afraid that she would usher in the most tragic end. The van was blocking the intersection. Escaping was almost impossible. Instead of falling to that point, it was better to die here. So Mizuki Takamiya fiercely bit the hand that grabbed her arm. The moment the other person subconsciously let go of her arm, she slammed her head into a huge metal valve in the alley. but she didn't succeed. The criminal next to her immediately reacted and kicked her to the ground. Mizuki Takamiya, whose leg was injured, naturally couldn't stand up quickly. Thus, she could only watch helplessly as the burly man whom she had bitten cursed and raised his hand to attack her. The girl closed her eyes and mentally prepared herself to be beaten. But for some reason, although she heard the sound of being beaten, she didn't feel any pain at all. So she carefully opened her eyes and found that the kidnappers had all fallen to the ground. They were foaming at the mouth and unconscious. The van at the entrance of the alley was like it was hit by a tank. It broke in half and flipped over on the road. The sun shone in from the entrance of the alley. In the glow, a young man wearing a t-shirt and beach pants with a smile on his face slowly walked towards her like a god. Then he spoke. "Oh my God, I accidentally got lost. Hey girl, can I ask for directions?" Chapter 78. After experiencing the strange pervert incident on the tram, Chihaya Fukuyama arrived at Phoenix Academy and found the atmosphere in the class a little strange. Generally speaking, there was a feeling of restlessness. If one listened carefully, they seemed to be able to hear words like concubine's palace and kidnapping. But other than Asahi Sakurakanji, she did not have any friends in the class, and the others did not take the initiative to talk to her because of their respect for her as an elder sister. So even if they cared, they would not be able to find out the whole story. Although she could just casually ask any student, and they would be overwhelmed by her favor and spit out all the information they knew. But this would make things very troublesome for her, so she gave up on this plan. Not long after, the teacher's arrival made the atmosphere in the class settle down a little. First of all, I have a piece of good news for everyone. Asahi Sakurakanji's family matters have finally been settled, and she will be returning to school tomorrow. The teacher put down the tablet in her hand and clapped her hands to get everyone's attention before she said cheerfully. The young lady started to discuss, and for a moment, everyone seemed to have forgotten the rules of being a lady. But this also meant that the gentle Asahi, even though she was a fujoshi, was very popular among the students. "Hey little kittens, don't continue to make noise. The court meeting is not over yet." The teacher clapped her hands again to get the students to quieten down. "There's another thing to announce. From today onwards, our class will have an additional adorable kitten. According to this teacher's quirk, it meant that there was a transfer student." Chihaya supported her chin with one hand, and the whatever part of her mind was thinking absent-mindedly. The other students seemed to be very interested and waited for the teacher to introduce the new student. Feeling that she had whetted the student's appetite, the teacher smiled and said to the door, "Emoli, you can come in now." The students in the classroom subconsciously looked towards the door. For a long time, nothing happened. The homeroom teacher awkwardly pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and tried to call out Emoli, but there was still no response from outside. So she did not care that she was wearing a skirt and quickly ran to the door to open it, only to find that there was no one outside. "Emoli, he's gone." The pitiful homeroom teacher let out a sorrowful wail, as if he was a member of the Moonlight Clan whose salary was about to be cut. After a few minutes of chaos, the homeroom teacher, who was on the verge of breaking down, finally found Emoli in the courtyard and brought her back to class. Although when I heard Emoli's name, I knew that might be the case. Chihaya felt a slight stomachache as he looked at the blonde lowly with double ponytails, who was telling their homeroom teacher on the podium that she had lost herself in the path of life without any sense of guilt. Emoli is from Huaxia. The homeroom teacher finally calmed down. He squeezed out a kind smile and added to Emoli's meager self-introduction. She clearly has such beautiful blonde hair." A student exclaimed in surprise. Emoli was silent for a few seconds before answering slowly. "Genetic mutation." Chihaya's hand, which was supporting his chin, slipped and almost hit his head on the desk. Even saying that he was a mixed blood would be a better reason than this. The class was shrouded in an eerie silence. Everyone probably realized that this new classmate was a bit strange. Chihaya thought to himself, "Aha, Emoli is really humorous. Why did you come all the way to Japan to study?" Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit strange, The homeroom teacher had no choice but to come out and deal with the aftermath, to repay a debt of gratitude. M.O. Lee's gaze turned to Chihaya, who was alarmed. He waved at her. Hello, Chihaya Ryu. Who's that? Ryuet classmate. You even removed the correct part. Chihaya Ryu. Don't use Ryuet on me if you know it's Ryuet. Chihaya Fukuyama, who had subconsciously ridiculed him, suddenly realized that her rhythm had been led astray by M.O. Lee. She couldn't help but shout in her heart that something was wrong. The reactions of the surrounding students also proved this point. That unsmiling classmate from the remote mountains actually revealed that kind of expression. Although it's inconceivable, but Big Sister's expression is also very fresh. To be able to make Big Sister ridicule him. Who exactly is this new classmate? This kind of acting dumb technique. Could he be the legendary M1 expert? I smell the scent of news. How could an honest and upright person like me let go of such an interesting matter? Last fellow, don't run away after school. Dividing line, Phoenix Academy also had a student council. Although it was initially suggested for Big Sister Mizuki Takamiya or Chihaya Fukuyama to be the student council president, the former rejected because she was busy with her work while the latter was totally uninterested. Under the persuasion of the teachers, the both of them finally agreed to take on the role of vice president in the student council. After all, the both of them had a high reputation among the students, and if they were outside, it would easily affect the work of the student council. On the other hand, if they were in the student council, even if they were just flower vases or mascots, they would still be able to bring about considerable benefits to the student council. After enduring till the end of class with much difficulty, in order to avoid those curious students, Chihaya had no choice but to head to the student council's office classroom. As the vice president, being able to use the student council's office as she wished was a pretty good benefit. But when she reached the classroom, she discovered that there was already someone who had arrived earlier. Greetings, student from the remote mountains. The other party stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the White Bell Mountain. Because of the sound of the door opening, the other party discovered Chihaya and unhurriedly turned around, using a ladylike action to greet her. Good morning, Senior Fagon. Seeing that the person in the room was, in some sense, a young lady who was in the same predicament as herself, Chihaya relaxed a little. Is that lackey of yours not around today? As for little Jean, because teacher has something to discuss with the student council president, so she's at the office. Mizuki Takamiya smiled as she replied. Following that, the both of them simultaneously fell into silence. After a moment, Chihaya took the initiative to ask, This morning, did anything happen? It's not a happy matter. Mizuki Takamiya turned around and placed one hand on the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out of the window in a daze. Sorry. No need to apologize. It's not something that you can't tell anyone. Mizuki Takamiya smiled slightly and then revealed a serious expression. Hey, student from the remote mountains, do you believe in love at first sight? Chapter 79. Su Xinxing and Asahi Sakurakanji were walking on the path leading to the Shirenui Shrine. Asahi Sakurakanji, who was leading the way, looked back at Su Xinxing several times. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he gave up. Looking at Asahi Sakurakanji, who seemed to want to say something, Su Xinxing finally sighed and took the initiative to ask, Is there anything you want to say to me? That. I remember you told Mr. Su Phone that you were going to sneak into the academy. That's right. Didn't we sneak in without being discovered? No, that's not it. Asahi Sakurakanji wanted to cry, but had no tears. You were discovered by the bodyguards of the other students as soon as you approached the academy. Then, when you knocked down the bodyguards, you were also discovered by the security guards of the academy. So, you simply knocked down all the guards of the academy and climbed over the wall to get in. It doesn't matter as long as we weren't discovered by the students and teachers of the academy. What's the difference between sneaking in without alerting anyone and knocking down all the people in the way? That's why it's not called sneaking in. It doesn't matter. I've already asked the ghost to make those guys lose their memories physically. Even if they wake up, they won't remember anything. That's not the point. Well, to be able to let me see a real fall. I'm very grateful. Well, it seems that I have to reflect on my sneaking method. Why? The two of them noisily arrived at the Shirenui shrine. Although it was a shrine, in fact, because Asahi Sakurakanji and the god she originally served lived here, the shrine was full of life, except for the rope bells outside, the tournament box, and the slightly smaller shrine inside. Su Xinxing even saw a girl's underwear on a chair. What are you looking at? The embarrassed girl hurriedly went up and put away the underwear that was obviously much too big for her. Lord Fate is really always throwing things around. Asahi Sakurakanji complained as he cleaned up. He wanted to pretend that he didn't care, but his expression became lonely. Su Xinxing, who didn't know how to comfort her, could only sigh helplessly. He looked around and noticed that there was a lot of dust in Sakurakanji's house, probably because there was a lot of dust in the mountains. Sakurakanji had only been away from the shrine for about a week, but there was already a lot of dust in the house. There were no traces of it being touched, which meant that no one had come in this week. Asahi, you deliberately didn't clean up the things of the previous god. Do you think she will come back? Ing Xiaolu's hand stopped in the middle of packing things, and her thin shoulders trembled slightly. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. Unfortunately, that was impossible. Su Xinxing once mistakenly ate fried rice made by the ghosts, which greatly impacted his spirit. As a result, he received the spiritual message left by Yakumo on Asahi Sakurakanji. Therefore, he knew very well that Yakumo was not missing, but had completely disappeared. She returned her existence to Tsukuyami, and in the process, she seemed to have affected an innocent person. In exchange for a powerful divine power, she used it to seal the demon's soul on Asahi and in the dry well, so that Asahi Sakurakanji could live a normal life. At the end of her life, she made a wish to her successor that Asahi Sakurakanji could live a happy life in the future, just like Asahi Sakurakanji's real mother. If you really can't accept the fact that she is no longer here, it doesn't matter even if you keep those things. In the end, Su Xinxing still didn't tell Asahi Sakurakanji everything he knew. I don't have high requirements for daily living conditions. In general, as long as there was salt and water, one could live. No, it's okay. The girl shook her head and forced a smile. I also know that it's not okay to continue like this. As she said that, she packed up those things again. But this time, while she was packing up, she would tell Su Xinxing about the past of those things as if they were her family's treasures. This bug pouch was made for me when I went out with Master Ming to catch a spade worm when I was young. However, Master Ming is not good at handwork, so she made it very ugly. I even got into a fight with her because of this. In the end, Master Ming brought me a spade worm early in the morning. Later on, I found out that she didn't sleep the whole night just to catch that worm for me. This cheap bracelet with a cross was bought by Ming-sama from the town when I couldn't sleep after watching a horror movie. At that time, she told me that was a treasure blessed by the gods from Takamajihara. With this, I didn't have to be afraid of anything. I foolishly believed her and always wore this bracelet with me. It was not until Ming-sama told me the truth when I was 12 years old that I took it off. This fishing rod was made by Ming-sama when she said that she wanted to eat ISC lobster. But because the town was too far away and the budget allocated by Inyang Liao was not much, I could only go to the beach to try fishing. Although I didn't catch any lobster in the end, I accidentally caught a snapper. Ming-sama was very happy to tell me. This doll was my favorite prize when the small town at the foot of the mountain was about to move. When the last temple fair was held, Ming-sama and I went to the shooting booth together. In the end, I spent all my pocket money and didn't get anything. But Ming-sama secretly helped me get this doll. Although I felt sorry for the stall owner, I was really happy at that time. This bottle of sake was bought by Ming-sama when Huanghua Academy was building around White Bell Mountain. Because Daiso Financial Group agreed to let me go to school for free, Ming-sama was happy and used the money that she had saved to buy it. She said that she would keep it until I got married. Sob. The girl bit her lips tightly, trying hard not to let the tears in her eyes fall. I think that crying at this time might make you feel a little better. Su Xinxing sat quietly by the side, listening to the girl talk about the past between her and the deity who had already disappeared. seeing the girl's eyes gradually turning red and her voice becoming more and more nasal. He could only give this suggestion. Ming-sama said that the only place where a witch can cry is the toilet and in the deity's arms. Asahi said softly. Su Xinxing sighed again and pulled the girl into his arms. Then it's okay. I'm more or less a deity now. You don't have to endure it? Yes, of course. Chapter 80. Mizuki Takemiya was in love. Chihaya Fukuyama believed that if news of this were spread, it would definitely cause a huge commotion in Phoenix Academy. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that this child who was circling around Mizuki Takemiya was definitely something that they would not be able to accept. The girl was petite, and although she was already a second-year high school student, but it would not be wrong to say that she was a junior high school student. She wore a cute pink hairband, which did not match her lively temperament, and her chestnut hair was slightly curled up, looking like a dog's ears, which was why she was nicknamed Little Dog Jam. Her name was Wu Yejin, and she was the current president of Phoenix Academy's student union. At the same time, she was also the president of the non-official Big Sister Fei Gong fan club. In terms of scale, the latter was much bigger than the former. Because of this, Wu Yejin had a huge say in the academy. After Chihaya Fukuyama and Mizuki Takemiya gave up on the position of president of the student union, she naturally took up this position. I only have one goal in becoming the president, and that is to protect Big Sister Fei Gong's school life well. Other than Chihaya, there were probably quite a number of students in Phoenix Academy who had a deep impression of what Wu Yejin had said at the inauguration ceremony. Incidentally, after this, the number of people in the Big Sister Fei Gong fan club increased once again. Putting aside the morbid obsession with Mizuki Takemiya, Wu Yejin was undoubtedly an extremely outstanding president. As an aristocratic academy, Phoenix Academy's funds were sufficient, and all the societies were able to obtain a considerable amount of budget. But because of this, Phoenix Academy's student union's affairs were extremely heavy, and just checking the various societies' expenses required a considerable amount of manpower and energy. But after Wu Yejin took up the position, the originally messy affairs became orderly, and under her leadership, the members of the student union, other than the two vice presidents, were extremely motivated and were even nicknamed by the students as Little Dog Jam's evil dogs. With such outstanding ability, Wu Yejin would occasionally boast to others that she would work at Mizuki Takemiya's side after graduation. Speaking of which, Father Wu Yi, who had founded Wu Yi Transportation Company from scratch, would cry. Although their assets could not be compared to the first-class financial groups like Fei Gong, but the Wu Yi family, which was mainly in logistics, was actually considered as not bad among the second-class financial groups in Japan. Senior Shinshan, you've stopped? Due to her extreme admiration for Mizuki Takemiya, Wu Yejin's attitude toward Chihaya was no different from any other ordinary student. Sorry. Chienzeo calmed herself down and once again entered a piece of paper in front of her into the student council's notebook. But she was not, after all, she was not a busy. So she to her to do. But her mind couldn't help but wander again. Maybe because they were in the same boat, Mizuki Takemiya actually told her the secret that should have been buried deep in his heart. So, as the daughter of the Fei Gong family, that girl must have endured so much pain because she didn't have anyone to talk to. Just like now, Mizuki Takemiya was no longer on campus. He went to the airport and took a private plane to attend another international business cooperation meeting. Kidnappers and whatnot. For a commoner child like Chiyu Zeo, it was simply like a weekend afternoon drama. It was too far away, and she was completely unable to understand what kind of feelings it contained. Even if she encountered a criminal, at most it would be the type of idiot. Speaking of idiots, Chihaya once again remembered what happened in the morning. What kind of idiot jumped out of the window to commit suicide when he was discovered? Even if Japan was known as the country of suicide, it was too abnormal to commit suicide for such a reason. Also, she didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that when Mizuki Takemiya described the person who saved her although he added a lot of glittering special effects. But if she ignored the appearance and clothes, he was just like the idiot who jumped out of the car to commit suicide. It must be a coincidence. Maybe old t-shirts and Hawaiian-style beach pants are the latest trend? Fashion trends were never something that a commoner girl like her could understand. She had no more than 20 clothes in her closet, and half of them were school uniforms. Mayama-senpai. Wu Yejin's voice brought Chihaya back to reality. The girl sighed. If senpai is tired, please go outside and rest for a while. If you stay here, you will affect the efficiency of the other members. Hey, why did Koka-chan kick out Oni-sama? A member complained. Over there. Don't call her by that nickname. Wu Yejin's grimacing face and her somewhat fluffy hair made her look more like a puppy trying to intimidate the enemy. Because Mayama-senpai's melancholy expression is too beautiful. Of course, it can't compare to Oni-sama. The other members can't help but peek. If this goes on, there will be no efficiency at all. Please go out and harm the other students. Mayama-senpai is too dictatorial, protest. But her intimidation had no effect at all, and the members of the student council were still heckling. Call me Oni-sama. If you want to be Oni-sama's right-hand man, this is not enough. Hey, but I plan to inherit my mother's business. Shut up. Those that don't want to be Oni-sama's subordinates are not good ladies. Well, I think you don't look like a lady at all right now. Seeing the members of the student council relax a little, Chihaya silently applauded Wu Yejin for using herself as a joke to relieve pressure without leaving a trace. At the same time, she was also in awe of her acting skills. Her acting was really too realistic. Look at her face that was red from being teased. Look at her eyes that were full of tears due to shame and anger. Look at her little canine teeth that were exposed due to rising anger. Was this really acting? Chihaya suddenly felt like a storm was coming. Her early warning of disaster, which was tempered by the hardships she had experienced since childhood, was now ringing loudly. Well, I'll go out first. Thank you for your hard work. Chihaya Fukuyama left the battlefield. Then came the roar of Mayamano Wu Yejin, the student council president, from the student council. Chapter 81. He carried Asahi Sakurakanji, who had cried herself to sleep, to the old sofa in the shrine. Su Shinshin looked at the crayon drawing of an umbrella on the back of the sofa. On both sides of the umbrella handle were the words Minami-sama and Asai written in hiragana. He couldn't help but gently stroke the girl's bangs in her sleep. The girl seemed to feel something. She turned over and murmured softly, Minami-sama, don't leave me behind. This is really troublesome. Su Shinshin scratched his face and looked around the shrine again. In short, it was a warm little home. It was full of life. At the same time, he could see traces of the life left by the god called Yakumo everywhere. It was natural that Asahi Sakurakanji would feel sad staying in such a place. How about erasing the girl's memory? Since he was going on a long trip, Qin Xingyin made some talismans that might be useful. One of them was the kind that could erase the memory of ordinary people. After all, Su Shinshin's memory erasing technique, physical, was a bit difficult to control. It would be a big problem if he accidentally used the cervical fracture technique. Su Shinshin looked around the room again and dismissed the idea. Although this memory would only bring pain to Sakurakanji now. No matter who it was, they would encounter something similar, the death of the family that raised them. No matter how painful and sad it was, it didn't mean that Su Shinshin could take away other people's memories of their parents. It was a most precious memory in a person's life when they grew up from a child to an adult. Let's see if I can get through to Dad's phone later. Although the international call made Su Shinshin's heart ache. While complaining about the increasing cost, Su Shinshin went to the backyard of the shrine. There was a well in the corner of the backyard. The well was surrounded by ropes, and it was covered with paper that looked like coins and various talismans that were filled with spells. It looked like a scene from the Ring of Midnight. Su Shinshin stepped over the rope without a care and arrived at the well in a few steps. Several ropes were wrapped around the well. These ropes were connected to each other at the mouth of the well, and finally twisted into a strand that hung down into the well. Looking down from the mouth of the well, one could see a hanging bucket. Inside the bucket was a jade seal that was slightly yellowish in color. Su Xinxing pulled the barrel up and picked up the seal. This should be the suppressing Chuan seal that Su Feng mentioned before. Then, Su Xinxing looked into the well again. It was still pitch black inside. He raised his eyebrows and then jumped into the well. Unfortunately, he didn't travel back to the Warring States period because of this. There were a few strange bones at the bottom of the well, but there was nothing else. Even if he released the spirit ghosts to let them sense the existence of spiritual beings, the final answer was no. There was nothing in this dry well at all. Did the gods and the Yin Yang hut make a mistake? Su Xinxing didn't think that they would make such a big fuss. If they didn't confirm it, the Yakumo wouldn't have returned his existence just to seal something that didn't exist. So, the answer was very clear. Did that thing escape? It's lucky. I wanted to hit its right face first if it had a face. Su Xinxing snorted. Speaking of which, only half of the thing sealed at the bottom of the well was sealed. The other half should be with Asahi Sakura Kanji. So, Asahi Sakura Kanji might be in danger now. But Su Xinxing climbed out of the well unhurriedly and returned to the shrine. As expected, Sakura Kanji was still sleeping soundly. But the protection of counterattack he set up here had been triggered. He estimated that the thing with bad intentions was half dead from the protection bullet. TSK, I overestimated its strength. The limit of the rebound was set too high. The protection of counterattack was like a rubber band. The stronger the enemy, the longer the rubber band was stretched, and the stronger the rebound force. But if the enemy's strength was like an ant, the rubber band wouldn't be able to stretch much, and the rebound force would naturally be weak. The current situation was that the limit of the protection of counterattack was set too high. It was as hard as a rubber band, and it required a lot of strength to stretch it. The monster couldn't even stretch it much. On the other hand, if the limit was set lower, it might have been able to kill the monster directly. It's all the fault of those guys from the Yin Yang hut. They kept bragging about how strong that thing was, and that even the gods couldn't defeat it. I really believed it. Isn't it worse than the small fries in the Demon King's army? Su Xinxing muttered unhappily. Before Su Xinxing's hair began to fall out, those small fries who were as big as mountains had super strong recovery abilities and could defeat a human heavy magic knight team with a wave of their hand, had caused him a lot of trouble. Fortunately, I was prepared. I asked Xingyan a dream for this. Su Xinxing smiled confidently and took out a talisman from his pocket. This talisman could record the breath of the enemy and track the enemy within a certain range, although there were many restrictions in using it. For example, the owner of the recorded breath couldn't leave the place for more than half an hour. When recording, one's hand had to be steady and couldn't tap dance, but overall, it was quite useful. As for how to activate this talisman, Su Xinxing had already prepared for it. Although he had all of Mo Li's magic in his body, unfortunately, as a magic idiot, he couldn't use it at all. But this didn't stop him from thinking of other ways to use the talisman. For example, he could grab the deity tablet that was drifting around him and twist it like squeezing a towel. He could squeeze out the divine power from it and use that divine power to activate the talisman. This method had already been tested in Sakura's apartment and was successful. That was why Su Xinxing asked Qin Xingyan for so many talismans. My great celestial empire's magic power is #1 in the world. Su Xinxing was just about to use the deity tablet to squeeze out divine power when he suddenly remembered that the martial god's incomplete deity tablet was no longer with him. Ah, that butt! He slapped his head and his gaze fell on the huge academy at the foot of the mountain. Speaking of which, I remember that her uniform is the same as Sakura Kanji's. That means she's also a student of Huanghua Academy? I have to take the deity tablet back from that. But in any case, Emoli was also there. Right now, she shouldn't have attracted anyone's attention and quietly sneaked in. When the time came, she would let the little girl cover her and take back the incomplete deity tablet. Chapter 82. After leaving the building where the student union was located, Chihaya realized that she didn't have anything in particular that she wanted to do. It was now afternoon tea time in Huanghua Academy. Ordinary commoners would either participate in club activities or stay in the classroom to revise their homework. Other than the members who were also participating in club activities, most of the young ladies would have tea parties in the backyard of the academy. As a member of the ordinary students, Chihaya definitely wouldn't participate in the upper-class tea party, although the members of the tea party would definitely welcome her with open arms. Therefore, she still went to the courtyard. As soon as she arrived, she saw a few lower-grade children huddled under a tree, looking up at the tree with a worried expression. Since she had nothing to do, Qianzhao simply came to the side of the tree and looked up. Soon, she understood what the children were looking at. A white kitten was shivering at the end of a branch, and in front of it, a large, colorful snake was coiled around the root of the branch, looking at the kitten and hissing its forked tongue. If this continued, the kitten, who didn't dare to jump down, would soon become the snake's meal. Although the children under the tree wanted to stop it, they basically didn't know how to climb trees, and, as girls, it was difficult to overcome their natural fear of snakes. Didn't Kai go to call the teacher? Is the teacher not here yet? Usually we can always see the patrolling security guards, but now when we need them, we can't see any of them. What should we do? Should we go to the sports room and take out a mat and put it under the kitten? In the end, they could only chatter incessantly like a flock of sparrows in a state of utter stupor. This made the kitten even more afraid, but the snake wasn't affected at all and continued to approach the kitten. Chihaya looked at the little white kitten with a trace of pity in her eyes, but soon she lowered her head and planned to leave the courtyard. Because she didn't know how to climb trees, even if she went there, she wouldn't be able to help. Moreover, as a child who was bullied since she was young, she understood the meaning of the law of the jungle better than those pampered young ladies. At this time, she felt someone tugging at the corner of her clothes. When she turned around, she realized that Immerse had appeared behind her. "Do you want to save the cat?" The little girl looked up at her and asked expressionlessly. The afternoon sun shone down on the courtyard. The girl's smooth and fair skin reflected the sunlight, making her seem like she was covered in a layer of fluorescent light. She looked like she was in a dream. But if you save the cat, you'll turn into a snake and starve because there's nothing to eat. There's no right or wrong. It's just an action purely for the sake of survival. This is the so-called law of the jungle. Qianzhao shifted her gaze away from Jasmine and said softly as she turned her face away, "Japanese is too complicated. I can't understand it." Jasmine didn't pay any attention to the girl's self-reproach. She only looked at Qianzhao with a pure gaze. "I only want to know, do you want to save the kitty?" Raising her head, Chihaya looked at the shivering little white kitten again. She felt like she was looking at her helpless self in the past. She was alone in the face of the malice around her. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't resist anything. She could only hold her head and cry alone in the night, letting the loneliness and pain gnaw at her heart. If someone had helped her back then, maybe she wouldn't have turned into this awkward person who couldn't even make friends. Save? Since when did he become like this? She lost the hope for the future. In order to not be hurt, she closed her heart and lost interest in everything. Even if she encountered this kind of situation, she could just say this is the law of the jungle. It can't be helped. She wouldn't feel any sadness because of it. Since when had she turned from a victim to a perpetrator like those who had treated her coldly in the past? Save it, please. Immerse's gaze seemed to be magical, and it was magical. It caused cracks to appear in Chihaya's strong heart. In the end, the girl lowered her eyes and pleaded to Immerse with a voice that was almost inaudible. "Leave it to me." Immerse nodded with satisfaction. He patted his chest that was barely moving. Then he turned around and squeezed through the girls under the tree. "Wow, my foot is stepped on. Who is it? Wait, don't push me. Who is this unfamiliar guy? Is he the first-year transfer student? Give me some space. Hey, big sister from the mountains." At first, the girls who had been pushed aside had unhappy expressions on their faces. They wanted to argue with Jasmine, but when they saw Qianzhao behind Jasmine, whose expression was worse than usual, they couldn't help but cower. Words have power. Standing in front of the tree, Immerse raised his head and looked at the kitten and the giant snake. It sounded like he was talking about something important, but because his young face didn't match his words, it felt like a child trying to pretend to be an adult. As long as you communicate well, others will understand. That's what the landlord said. After that, she did not give Chizeo any time to complain about the landlord. Instead, she cupped her hands into the shape of a trumpet and shouted at the snake on the branch in a rhythmic tone. Mr. Snake, please stop. Don't do anything stupid. Mr. Snake, think about your old mother in your hometown. She'll cry if she knows. Are you a cop trying to persuade you to surrender? Originally, Chizeo was also extremely serious because of Jasmine's words and serious expression. However, she didn't expect that this unreliable Jasmine not only planned to use words to persuade the snake to come down, but also used words that were similar to a police officer persuading a criminal. This made Chizeo suddenly have a feeling that there's something wrong with my head for believing her. However, just when everyone thought that Immerse was just joking, the snake really stopped moving and slithered down the tree. The girls under the tree were so scared that they ran away. Only Immerse and Chihaya were still there. But even Chihaya was a little uneasy when he saw the giant snake that was as thick as his wrist. When the snake came down, it even raised its triangular head and nodded at Immerse and the girls in a very human-like way. Then, it crawled into a small ditch and disappeared with a splash. It actually worked. Chihaya blinked, his eyes full of disbelief. See, I told you it's not a problem. Immerse turned around and proudly straightened the washing board. This is the power of communication. Chapter 83. Guard Xiosher was one of Huanghua Academy's security guards. Today, he encountered a situation that gave him a headache. Including him, all the security guards seemed to have lost a portion of their memories. Could it be that someone invaded and erased our memories? He walked along the path that he was usually in charge of patrolling and muttered doubtfully. But soon after, he couldn't help but laugh. How could such a thing happen? This isn't a novel or a game. In the next moment, an arm stretched out from behind the tree and strangled his neck. Not long after, due to the pressure on his neck artery, he fainted due to lack of oxygen. Looks like he was missing another piece of his memory. Woo, 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 woo. You're making a move again. And this time it's not a fall. Asahi Sakurakanji, who was following behind, Su Xinxing and witnessed everything, complained softly. It's fine, I've already sent my spirit ghost to scout from the sky. As long as we clear this patrol point, there shouldn't be any obstacles in the future. Su Xinxing dragged the security guard into the bushes and pulled off his clothes. Lord God. Asahi Sakurakanji's face flushed red and used both hands to cover his eyes. Then he widened his eyes and looked at Su Xinxing's actions. Even if I'm unable to endure the thirst, but I still feel that this is a little no. I just feel that this guy's body type is about the same as mine. If I change into his clothes and disguise myself as a security guard, there shouldn't be a problem. So, it's like this. Why do you have such a disappointed expression? Wrong. That's your misconception. Forget it, whatever. Anyway, I'm going to take off my clothes, turn around. Tisk, so why are you making such a dissatisfied sound? Just as the two of them were conversing, Guard Xiosher sneezed and slowly woke up, probably due to the difference in temperature due to his clothes being pulled off. Then he saw an unfamiliar male squatting in front of his naked body, making an action of taking off his clothes. Before he could scream, Su Xinxing hit an acupoint in his abdomen. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Lord God, why are you so familiar with this? Because I've done something similar before, and more than once. There was a nostalgic look on Su Xinxing's face. As a hero, he once sneaked into the Demon King's territory with a group of companions in a different world. As a result, he was exposed because he was still a high school student and had no experience. In the end, he had to defeat the Demon King's army gathered there with his companions and turn the infiltration into a great war of the United Human Army to reclaim the lost land. By the way, What Su Xinxing missed the most was that his hair had not started to fall out at that time. By the way, Sakura Kanji, you're a student here. You don't have to sneak around like me, do you? Isn't it the responsibility of a witch to follow God-sama? The girl asked. Ugh. In that case, he had to give up on the plan of taking this person's wallet. Su Xinxing muttered in his heart. All in all, after changing into Wei Xiusher's clothes, Su Xinxing swaggered along with Sakura Kanji to the courtyard of Huanghua Academy. The front courtyard of the academy was filled with all kinds of beautiful gardening and fountains. It was purely for viewing and not a place to rest. The rear courtyard was where the young ladies rested and held their tea party. From the point that the child needed to take the tram, he should not be the type to participate in the tea party. In addition, even the security guards were not allowed to enter the school building. In the end, the only place left to try his luck was the courtyard. In the end, Su Xinxing saw Mo Li and Chihaya Fukuyama in the courtyard as he wished. Very good, as expected of Mo Li. You've won my heart, he muttered in satisfaction and then began to walk around the courtyard, intending to change his position to observe the girls, but the broken deity tablet stuck on the girls' butt. Asahi Sakura Kanji followed Su Xinxing's gaze and saw the target they were looking for. When she realized that it was Chihaya Fukuyama, she was stunned. She tugged on the sleeve of Su Xinxing's security guard uniform. After attracting Su Xinxing's attention, she leaned over to his ear and briefly introduced Chihaya Fukuyama's identity. So that's how it is. The White Bell Shrine's next deity that you were talking about is her. Su Xinxing suddenly realized. When he was at the Bailu Temple, the temple head had also imparted some knowledge about the deity tablet to Su Xinxing. Although he was asleep most of the time, there were some parts where he was forced to listen to because Qin Xingyan threatened him with rent. Among them was the part where the holders of the broken deity tablet would attract each other. Of course, this mutual attraction did not refer to a romantic relationship, but when the physical distance between them reached a certain extent, they would involuntarily move closer to each other. This was not a case of birds of a feather flocking together. It was more inclined to the argument that the broken deity tablet unconsciously wanted to devour other broken deity tablets to complete itself. Su Xinxing's deity tablet was in a broken state because the name of the Einherjar was taken away. Chihaya Fukuyama's deity tablet was a bloodline inheritance. Needless to say, the bloodline of the deity tablet's ancestors had diluted over the years, so it was understandable that the two deity tablets would attract each other. Wait, if that's the case, then there's no need for me to take back the Einherjar's deity tablet, right? Since they were going to continue discussing the current situation, Su Xinxing was not in a hurry to go out. Instead, he hid in the bushes with Sakura Kanji and whispered, "If we let it enter the girl's body to complete the deity tablet, wouldn't that make the girl directly become a deity? I think it's better to treat things like deity tablets with caution." Asahi Sakura Kanji blushed and seriously suggested, "Also, didn't you say that your deity tablet is stuck to Lord Yamanaka's, but that strange part? I think there's something wrong with entering Lord Yamanaka's body from there." TSK, Su Xinxing showed an expression of disdain, but it's so troublesome to take it off. She thought I was an idiot this morning. It's okay, I'll go talk to Lord Yamanaka. I'm sure she'll understand. Asahi Sakura Kanji volunteered. What are you going to say to her? For the sake of world peace, please let Lord Yamanaka touch your butt. Why does Lord Yamanaka have an expression of, is this guy an idiot? You guessed right, Asahi. You're amazing. Tisk, TSK, 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 TSK. Lord Yamanaka, do you really think that way? Well, anyway, let's contact Emoli first and ask her for help. Don't ignore me, Lord Yamanaka. Chapter 84. In the alley behind the school building, Chihaya Fukuyama looked at Asahi Sakura Kanji, who was sitting on the ground with a gloomy face. She was happy to see her only friend, but who knew that this guy would ask her to let someone else touch her. But, thinking of this, Chihaya glared at Su Xinxing, who was pretending to whistle. By the way, he was whistling, and then reached out to pinch Asahi Sakura Kanji's soft cheeks. "You stupid girl, what did you learn this week?" "Yee, I just want to find Goddess Sama." Asahi Surakanji, who was trembling in fear, quickly broke free from Chihaya's hands and explained pitifully. The goddess-sama you found is this Hawaiian beach pants addict? I'm wearing pants, okay. Su Xinxing weakly retorted. Although the clothes weren't his own, that was all. Shut up, you idiot over there. I haven't settled the score with you for what happened this morning. It's not like I wanted to touch it. I'm not interested in the butt of girls over 14 years old except for legal lolis, huh? It had to be said that the angry Chizeo's gloomy expression was extremely bold. She only used one word to make Su Xinxing have a feeling of what a powerful Reiki, and he involuntarily stopped refuting. Only Jasmine's expression remained the same. She even had the spare time to eat the small refreshments that she had received from the young ladies at the tea party with relish. Actually, Goddess-sama came to Japan to protect you, Goddess-sama. Fortunately, Asahi Sakurakanji, who had been bathing in Chihaya's freezing aura all year round, was already immune to it. Even if he was scared to death, he could still speak. Protect me? Protect her? Chihaya Fukuyama and Su Xinxing exclaimed in surprise. Yes, because Makanyama-sama hasn't become a modern human god yet. You're not enough of a deterrent to many high-level demons. You might be attacked by them, so before you truly become a modern human god, you need a real god who can guard the White Bell Shrine and the surrounding area to deter those demons and monsters. Asahi Sakurakanji explained in detail. According to what you said, when you left Fusong for Jiangjin, this ass. All right, Miss Yamanaka, right? Please don't stare at me like that. Isn't this Miss Yamanaka also in danger? Su Xinxing asked. That's right. That's why Yin-Yang Liao had sent Yin-Yang masters to secretly protect Makiyama-sama. Asahi Sakurakanji answered honestly. Yeah, but I didn't feel anything. Chihaya Fukuyama couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. He had been tailed for a whole week without noticing, and he didn't see any unfamiliar faces around him during this time. Of course, because that Yin-Yang master was already in the academy before I left for Huaxia. Asahi Sakurakanji said admiringly. Until now, that Yin-Yang master hasn't shown any flaws. Chihaya Fukuyama thought for a moment, then suddenly asked Sakurakanji, the Yin-Yang master you're talking about, isn't it the transfer student who transferred to grade 1 some time ago? Makanyama-sama knows. Sakurakanji was shocked. Is there a need to be so surprised? Chihaya's eyebrows twitched. Even if it's me, I would know about the current situation of the academy, and I'm a member of the student council. Do you think I didn't see that strange resume? Makanyama-sama is unexpectedly smart. You only found out now, although it wasn't appropriate for him to say it, but Chihaya felt that he could be considered as the smart type. Even if he didn't spend too much effort on his studies, as long as he completed his homework and did a certain amount of preparation and revision, his grades would be stable in the top 10, and he wouldn't be biased in any subjects. Other than the imperial concubine Gong Rueishi, who was so outstanding that it made people gasp in admiration, there weren't many people in Phoenix Academy who could stand shoulder to shoulder with her. This was also one of the reasons why she was able to become the great elder sister. Phoenix Academy's great elder sister was the existence of both wisdom and beauty. Just a pretty face alone was not enough to convince those young ladies. Even though they were in the same class, Asahi Sakurakanji didn't notice this at all. This dealt a blow to Chihaya's confidence. Speaking of which, I remember that Miss M.O. Lee was originally in junior high school in Huaxia, right? The moment she came to Phoenix Academy, she immediately enrolled in senior high school. As expected, Miss M.O. Lee is a smart person. As if sensing Chihaya Fukuyama's oppressive aura, Sakurakanji decided not to touch on this bad luck. Instead, he shifted the topic to M.O. Lee, who was quietly eating her snacks like a hamster. Generally speaking, supernatural existences possessed learning and comprehension abilities that ordinary people couldn't hope to reach. Excellent grades and whatnot were the norm. Yes, generally speaking. No, the reason why M.O. Lee enrolled in senior high school is because regardless of junior high school or senior high school, her grades are equally bad. Rather than wasting time in junior high school, she might as well transfer to Sakurakanji's class. Emily puffed up her cheeks and didn't say a word. The one who helped her to reply was a nonchalant Su Xinxing. Anyway, her status is now an exchange student. No matter how bad her grades are, the teachers won't be able to call her parents. Asahi Sakurakanji's face was filled with confusion. On the other hand, Chihaya cast a disdainful look at Su Xinxing. It's all because of you that Emo-Li's grades are so bad. Emo-Li, during this period of time in Fusong, don't follow this Hawaiian beach pants pervert around. Come stay at my house. I will definitely tutor you well. Not sure if it was because of the previous encounter with Emo-Li that Chihaya had a good impression of her, so now she seemed to value Emo-Li. Naive. Emo-Li and I are of one mind. Do you think she will betray me? Su Xinxing snorted disdainfully with his nose. Later on, there will be high-grade mutton soup for dessert. Tonight's dinner will be hamburgers and stewed beef with potatoes. After that, there will be ice cream for dessert. Huff huff, don't tell me you think such a crude method of enticement will be effective. Let me tell you, crickets at this level. There's even a flower-shaped poached egg on top of the hamburgers. The sound of Emo-Li suddenly standing up. The sound of Jasmine's small running steps. The sound of Emo-Li suddenly turning around. Landlord, I will miss you. Emo-Li stood behind Chihaya Fukuyama and waved at Su Xinxing. She actually betrayed me. Chapter 85. Hanakeyuan, Yuyuan not motivated. Although she was around the same age as her classmates, as the eldest daughter of the Hanakeyuan family, one of the most orthodox Inyang Masters Earth Imperial Gate branch families, Hanakeyuan Yuyuan began learning Inyang Jutsu and how to control spirit-branded retainers from a very young age. She had fought against dangerous man-eating monsters and treated terrifying evil spirits and evil spirits. She had also investigated all kinds of urban legends and dealt with all the strange existences hiding behind them. In terms of the richness of life experience, not to mention those pure young ladies, even the senior teachers of Huanghua Academy could not compare to her. Other than the capital where the Inyang Hut headquarters was located, she could be considered as one of the top powers in the other branches. It was even normal for her to be the trump card when carrying out missions. But she did not expect that this time she would be the bodyguard of a female student, and it was for half a month. If it was not for the fact that the branch would contact her on time and provide her with some, including money consumables, she would have suspected that she had been forgotten here. But at this moment, she had to face an even bigger problem. Hey, Yu and Chan, are you reading by yourself again? Is this book very interesting? The young lady, named Little Vegetable, asked curiously as she leaned in front of Yuyuan. It's normal, Yuyuan replied indifferently. The book in her hands was actually a copy of the Inyang technique incantation from her clan. But there was a special enchantment set up on it, so if ordinary people were to look at it, they would only be able to see the ordinary. What's your name? Kaikai will also read it in the future. Oh, right. Speaking of books, Yuyuan-chan, let me tell you, Kaikai recently read a very interesting shoujo manga. The male and female protagonists are so cute, and the story is also very exciting. If you want to read it, I can bring it to school. But you have to be careful not to be discovered by the teacher. Little Vegetable also likes that manga very much. Also be careful not to let Senior Little Dog-chan see it. She seems to be in a bad mood recently. Just now, when Little Vegetable passed by the student union office, she was throwing a tantrum. It's really scary. Wawa. Speaking of which, Little Vegetable, I am here to look for the teachers. The other students are still waiting for me in the courtyard. You and Chan wait for a while. I will chat with you later. The English teacher, Ailuan, found it. Wait a minute, Little Vegetable. After shooting out a bunch of words like a machine gun, the girl named Kaikai left with small steps like a typhoon, leaving behind only Yuan's messy soul. She closed the thick, ancient book in her hand and stuffed it into her small leather bag expressionlessly. Sure enough, it's better to go to the library to read. Dividing line. After school, Yuan carefully avoided Kaikai at the shoe cabinet and took the opportunity to board the school bus and leave Phoenix Academy. In order to make it easier for her to protect the target, Inyang Laozwang had helped her rent a room on the second floor opposite the Deep Mountain Cafe. Therefore, she was also an off-campus student. However, due to the working rules of do not have too much emotional interaction with the person being protected, otherwise, it will affect your judgment when the person is in danger, Hanakai Miyuki did not have any direct conversation with the person being protected, Chihaya Fukuyama. For example, even if they were to take the same school bus, she would consciously sit in a corner where she could avoid the other party's line of sight. When it was time to change to the tram, she would sit in the carriage next to Chihaya Fukuyama's. It was not impossible to sit in the same carriage, but people would always feel a sense of familiarity towards things that appear in their line of sight. If her presence was detected by Chihaya Fukuyama, it would easily have a negative impact on the execution of the protection mission. Previously, when she was carrying out a similar mission, she was treated as a stalker by the target. Although what she did was no different from a stalker, through the transparent glass window of the carriage, Yuan confirmed the person beside Chihaya Fukuyama and then nodded her head slightly. As expected, it was the same as the reports sent by the Shikigami used to monitor Chihaya Fukuyama. An unknown person had appeared beside Chihaya. Although her appearance was exactly the same as a human's, and there was no trace of suspicious aura on her, Yuan's intuition told her that the blonde girl with double ponytails was definitely not a normal human. It was precisely because the other party's aura was too clean, so weak that without the assistance of a spirit-branded retainer or a spell, Yuan would not be able to detect the other party's existence. Even a dying human's aura would not be so weak, so Yuan could responsibly say that the girl was not an ordinary person. Although the girl did not do anything to harm Chihaya Fukuyama, as Chihaya Fukuyama's protector, it was better to eliminate such an unknown factor as soon as possible. Of course, as a onmyoji who could somewhat be considered as a law-abiding onmyoji, Yuan's method of eliminating such an unknown factor was definitely not to dig a hole and bury it, although for various aspects, this method was the most convenient. She would find an opportunity to get close to the unknown factor and use the power of the talisman to cast a spell on those people so that they would voluntarily stay away from the target of protection. Although this was a bit pitiful for the person being protected, it was also the safest method at present. For example, this time, when Chihaya Fukuyama entered the 800 Houses, Fuso's vegetable shop, to pick ingredients, Yuan quietly approached the blonde loli outside. But before she could do anything, the loli turned around and looked at Yuan, who was hiding behind a telephone pole. Her eyes were blank. Pervert! Since she had been discovered, she could only solve it as soon as possible. With this thought in mind, Yuan took out her spellbook from her bag. Her slender index finger slid across the spine of the book, and the book automatically opened. It was placed on one of the pages and floated in the air like a feather. Encircle, encircle. When will the bird in the cage fly out? The girl used her cold voice to sing the nursery rhyme, Caged Bird. Accompanied by her singing, black iron pillars suddenly stretched out from the shadows on the ground. 7 pillars surrounded Mo from 7 different directions and were connected to each other at the top, forming a huge black birdcage-like cage. The tortoise and the white crane slipped. The person behind you. Who is it? The nursery rhyme continued. Mo, who did not know what was going on, seemed to be pushed by an invisible hand and fell forward. At the same time, a hazy, thin black figure appeared behind the cage. It reached out its hands to the girl who was about to fall and tried to strangle her slender neck. I won't kill you, but please leave first, Yuan, who finished singing the nursery rhyme, silently said in her heart. Chapter 86. Although Japanese Yin-Yang Jutsu originated from Taoist magic, it became a brand new Shinto system after merging with the teachings of other religions. Some techniques that were considered heretical in Taoist magic became part of the system of Yin-Yang Jutsu. They were categorized and passed down from generation to generation. Hanakyu Yuan was currently using one of these techniques. She used nursery rhymes that had been passed down for a long time as the medium of the spell, singing nursery rhymes as the ritual to cast the spell. Due to the nursery rhymes and the stories behind the nursery rhymes, it was very easy to construct the spell. It was a method that even beginners would know. However, Yuyuan's attainment in the field of spell was almost at the level of a master. Even these little tricks could be used in her hands. For example, the caged bird that she just used was originally a spell that could only be used to imprison the enemy. At most, it would cause the enemy to fall into a deep sleep. However, she used the summoning ritual of the newly discovered monster, the Slender Man, and incorporated it into the spell so that the spell could be used to kill the enemy. Although other Yin-Yang masters could cause the Slender Man to bite them if they did not use the spell properly, it was more dangerous. By the way, since the Slender Man was given the meaning of killing children, this spell would cause extra damage to enemies with the body of a lowly or a Shota. As mentioned before, Anakuin Yuyuan's strength was one of the best among the modern Yin-Yang masters. She was also very good at controlling her own spells. She did not intend to hurt Emoli. She only wanted to use the Slender Man's strength to knock him out and send him back. Then, she would cast a spell on the fainted target so that she would be able to leave Chihaya Fukuyama on her own accord. However, at the moment when the skinny long ghost stretched his hand towards Jasmine, who seemed to have lost her balance, Jasmine went against her usual dazed and foolish appearance and grabbed onto the skinny long ghost's slender arm at an extremely fast speed. Her strength was so great that the slender monster's arm was bent in an unnatural manner. Yaoyuan, who was standing at the side, even heard the sound of something breaking. The Slender Man let out a painful roar, but it was completely different from the roar of an ordinary creature. It was more like the sound of someone scratching a rusty steel plate. Several black tentacles stretched out from its back and wrapped around Emoli. However, Emoli only turned his head and scolded in dissatisfaction. "Go on." The slender, ghostly figure's movements were completely frozen. Then, its entire body turned gray and finally turned into gravel and disappeared into the cage. "You really aren't an ordinary person," Hua Kaiyuan said coldly. She narrowed her eyes and waved her hand to summon the spell book that was floating in the air in front of her. She faced Emoli and waited. However, Emoli completely ignored her. He lifted his leg and kicked the black pillar in front of him. Cracks began to appear on the black pillar from the spot where she had kicked it. The cracks quickly spread to the other 6 pillars, and they all shattered into pieces. It seemed like he had some kind of anti-demon physique. Yuan made a judgment about Emoli's performance in front of him. If that was the case, then spells were basically useless against him. Perhaps physical damage would be more effective. Several bright yellow paper talismans flew out of the spell book and spontaneously combusted, replenishing Yuan's spiritual energy for the next attack. Shikigami summoned, half-step giant gate. Suddenly, the sky darkened. Emoli subconsciously raised his head, but only saw a huge shadow coming towards him. Judging from the area of the shadow on the ground, the object falling from the sky was definitely not smaller than a luxurious villa. If someone with spirit vision were to look from mid-air, they would see a gigantic elephant leg appear out of thin air and stomp towards the ground. Giant Gate belonged to the second star of the Big Dipper. It was also one of the 9 emperors. It controlled darkness and ruled right and wrong. There was no doubt that the Shikigami named after Giant Gate was the strongest among all the Shikigami. Even Yuan, who was known as a genius, couldn't completely summon it. However, this half-step Giant Gate's stomp from the sky was enough to kill the majority of demons and monsters. This was also one of the 3 trump cards of Hanakeyuan, who was a first-rate and even an ace Yin-Yang master. She was forced to use this move right from the start, so it could be seen how much pressure Jasmine, who hadn't done anything, gave her. Seeing such a huge thing fall from the sky, even Emoli was shocked. Although meteorite magic wasn't rare in another world, this was the first time the Demon King girl had seen something like stomp from the sky. If she still had her magical energy, she could use transfiguration magic to turn the elephant leg into a chicken leg. However, since her magical energy was sealed, there was only one way to fight back. Thus, Emoli raised her little fist. The moment the half-step Giant Gate stomped down, The violent air current was like a level 12 typhoon that blew everything in the surroundings away. Some of the trees with shallow roots were uprooted and swept into the air. The small private cars were also blown around, and the glass windows that were closer to the landing point were all destroyed. After that, the ground also gave out a sound that couldn't bear the weight. A tremor that was comparable to an earthquake swept through the surrounding area. Even Su Shenxing, who was far away in Phoenix Academy, felt some tremors. Although Mo Li, who received this attack, was fine, the asphalt road under her feet couldn't withstand such a strong force. It caved in and formed a huge hole. Even Mo Li herself was trampled into the soil. In the next moment, the half-step giant gate's legs suddenly turned into white smoke, and with a bang, it disappeared. The vacuum caused by the disappearance of such a large object caused the surrounding air to surge in, forming a violent whirlwind belt above the pit. The power of the wind was not inferior to the gust of wind that was stirred up when the giant door was stepped down. Yuran, who was at the edge of the hole, felt her vision turn dark. She couldn't help but half kneel on the ground. At the same time, she felt a warm liquid flowing out from her nose. The half-step giant gate's disappearance wasn't because the summoning time was up or because she had returned it. It was because after that attack, the half-step giant gate had suffered such a heavy injury that it couldn't stay in this world anymore. The wail of the huge elephant was still reverberating in Yuran's mind. This kind of backlash from a failed summoning caused her to suffer a considerable amount of mental damage. If it wasn't for the fact that her mental strength was different from ordinary people, just that attack alone would have been enough to burn her brain. With such a thing happening, Chahaya, who was in the 800 rooms, naturally couldn't have not noticed anything. When the other customers thought that it was an earthquake and were hiding in the shop, she ignored the danger and ran out. In the end, she was shocked by the huge hole that took up the entire road in front of her. Luckily, this place was considered remote, and there weren't many people around. Otherwise, just this one attack alone would have caused a lot of injuries or even death. Chapter 87. Hey. While Chahaya was staring blankly at the huge hole that suddenly appeared in front of her, Mo Li's voice came from the hole. Hanakyu and Yuan had already seen through the smoke with her spell-enhanced vision. She found that Mo Li was trying to climb out of the hole with her hands and feet. Are you kidding me? She was hit directly by the half-step giant door, but she was still alive and kicking. Even the legendary Super S-level monsters would not be able to do that. Finally realizing that the enemy in front of her was not someone she could deal with alone, the girl gritted her teeth and waved her hand. A string of paper talismans flew out and turned into a flock of white pigeons. They flew towards Mo Li, who was still trying to climb up with her short arms and legs. Mo Li, oh no. She fell on her back at the bottom of the hole and hugged her small head, crying out in pain. At the same time, she tried to suppress her dizziness and ran to Chihaya Fukuyama, who was still in a daze. She grabbed her arm and said, "Hold on to me. We're leaving." What? What happened? Chihaya Fukuyama, who was just here to be a bystander, didn't even know what was going on before she was dragged away by Hanakyu and Yuan. She sat on the enlarged spellbook and flew away. After that, Emoli flew up from the bottom of the hole with a superhuman pose. She had an expression that said, "I haven't flown for so long that I almost forgot I have this ability." At this time, the sound of a police car could be heard not far away. Emoli tilted her head and thought for 3 seconds before she made a decision. As usual, she would find the landlord if she couldn't solve the problem. Then she made herself invisible and flew in the direction of Su Xinxing's scent. On the other hand, Hanakyu and Yuan, who had finally escaped from the crime scene, no mistake, fell from the sky with Chihaya Fukuyama, who was still in a daze. Fortunately, the two of them had already flown to the surface of the sea. Below them was the sparkling sea, so they didn't get a concussion. The spell book made of an unknown material did not return to its original size, even after its owner fainted. It was still floating on the water like half a mattress, giving Chihaya a foothold after he fished Yuan out. Don't tell me it's going to be survival in the wild. Forgive me, I don't like that kind of plot. Chihaya Fukuyama grumbled as he used his backpack as a paddle to paddle the spell book boat. Speaking of which, it's already so late. Grandpa won't starve to death, will he? Fortunately, it didn't take long for Yu Yuan to wake up. Your Flowery Academy's student Yu Yuan, right? Chihaya stopped his futile attempts at using his backpack. He looked at the boy and said, "Based on the current situation, shouldn't you explain yourself?" Yoshi pondered for a moment and felt that it would be too troublesome to explain, so he continued with his usual expressionless face and said in a monotonous voice, "Isn't this Chihaya Fukuyama-senpai? What a coincidence! What coincidence! You're the one who said, 'Hold on to me, we're leaving now,' and then you carried me into the sea with a whoosh and fell into the sea with a splash. I was the one who fished you out. Chihaya Fukuyama-senpai knows how to swim? That's amazing. Don't use such a tone to tease a child. Do you think I'm an idiot?" "Of course not. I've always admired senpai." Flowery Academy's eyes drifted upward as he continued to read, without any sincerity. "Liar. You're definitely lying. Can you say that again in front of my eyes? I really admire." We've reached the shore." "So you're lying." Thankfully, the two did not end up on an uninhabited island. Even though it was not a good place to reach the shore, the beach next to it was a popular tourist spot with plenty of tourists. If the two of them drifted there like this, they would definitely cause a commotion. "Flowery Academy, you're actually someone sent by the Inyang faction to protect me, right?" Chihaya Fukuyama asked the Inyang master girl, who didn't have much of a change in her expression as the two of them climbed up the dam and sat there waiting for the bus. The Inyang master girl remained silent. "I've already learned the specifics from Asai." This time, the Inyang master girl finally reacted. Chihaya could faintly hear her muttering something along the lines of, "That's why people who use witches as their profession are unreliable." It seemed that even in the world of theology, there was also competition between professions. Actually, the god from Huaxiao has already arrived, and the child who's following me seems to be that god's follower. Chihaya tried to explain the current situation to Flowery Academy as best he could. "Impossible. Senpai, you've definitely been deceived." Flowery Academy, Yu Yuan decisively denied it. Let alone a follower of a god. Even among the gods, there weren't many who could fight against the Great Gate who maintained their strength in the divine realm in the modern world and even win. On the contrary, there were quite a few monsters in Huaxia's mythology. Although monsters' cultivation would be affected by spiritual energy, most of the monsters used their own demonic energy in battle. Unless they were casting spells, they didn't have much spiritual energy requirements. And the blonde lowly just now didn't cast any spells from beginning to end. In summary, it was more likely that she was a monster. But because it was too troublesome to explain, Flowery Academy, Yu Yuan decided to remain silent. Well, even if she was at the police station, she had the right to remain silent. So, why do you all think I'm an idiot? Can't you just trust me? Chihaya felt a little hurt. Although it was true that he was regarded as a perfect superwoman by his juniors and was given a lot of pressure by them, it was even more difficult for Chihaya to accept being treated as an idiot. Really look forward to senpai. So the Amayoji girl continued to speak like she was comforting a child. I've had enough of this kind of insincere words. Just when the two of them were quarreling, a cold feeling made them shiver at the same time. Flowering Garden, Yu Yuan immediately became alert. She had experienced this kind of cold feeling countless times. Every time she encountered an evil spirit or vengeful spirit. It was still daytime, and it was only the beginning of autumn, but the two of them couldn't feel the warmth of the sun at all. It was as if everything was taken away by the black fog that appeared not far away. I've been waiting for this opportunity. Finally, even the world is helping me and sent you to me. The black shadow made a strange hissing sound and approached the two of them. Flowery Academy Yu Yuan subconsciously blocked in front of Chihaya Fukuyama. She wanted to use spells to repel the shadow, but when she used the spell, she felt a pain in her head like needles. It seemed that the battle just now had completely exhausted her body. This is really bad. Chapter 88. Hannah Yuan Yuan held her throbbing head with one hand and stared at the enemy. If she couldn't use her spells and shikigami, she could only use her physical skills. She threw the spell book at the black mist and took out the talisman paper that was still dripping with water from her pocket. She stuck the talisman paper on her shoes and fists. The spell book was just a thick leather book without the support spells. Naturally, it was bounced away by the black mist. However, Hannah Yuan Yuan took advantage of this opening to make ample preparations. She exerted force on her feet, and with the help of the talisman paper, she shot forward like a spring and arrived in front of the black mist in the blink of an eye. Her right foot cracked the hexagonal tiles on the ground like a pile driver. Her foot was firmly fixed in that position, and her body was tilted forward due to inertia. Using the tremendous force generated by inertia and the full force of her right arm, the young girl's fist, which had the talisman stuck on it, smashed fiercely into the face of the black mist, forcefully blasting the black mist away for a long distance. Very good. I feel like I've hit something. The moment she attacked, what Yuan feared the most was that the enemy was a spirit-type monster that didn't have a physical body. Although the talisman paper she had prepared beforehand could deal a certain amount of damage to spirit-type monsters, that was only the damage the talisman paper brought. The power of her physical skills couldn't be used at all. After confirming that her physical skills were effective against the enemy, Hannah Yuan Yuan didn't give the enemy any time to breathe. She pulled her foot out of the shattered bricks and dashed over again. She used her boxing technique without any intervals to launch a series of consecutive punches. At first glance, the enemy who was shrouded in the black fog seemed to have no power to fight back and was constantly being beaten up like a sandbag. However, Hannah Yuan Yuan understood that not only did the enemy retain a considerable amount of combat power, she even seemed to have a certain level of understanding of combat skills. The girl's current taijutsu originated from the fusion of Bajiquan and Lehiquan. Some yin-yang masters would add yin-yang principles to it when they practiced. Although it wasn't as powerful as the original Bajiquan and didn't have as many variations as Lehiquan, it was more suitable for ordinary yin-yang masters compared to the first two. However, it was precisely because Bajiquan, as a model, was fierce and powerful, and Liuha Quan was flexible and varied, that this set of martial arts had a rather high physical requirement for the user. Even if Hannah Yuan Yuan was confident that she wouldn't lose to men of the same age in terms of physical strength, she was still a little girl who wasn't even 18 years old. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold on for long before a flaw appeared in the chain of martial arts due to lack of physical strength. If the enemy had seized that opportunity to counterattack, it would have dealt extraordinary damage. It would have been normal for Far Away to lose his ability to move. Blossoming Courtyard Yuan would not sit still and wait for death. The best thing about physical arts was that it allowed one to quickly figure out the enemy's body structure. Just the combo just now had allowed the girl to see through the black mist and understand what kind of enemy she was facing. Its appearance was similar to an enlarged version of a centipede. Its body was nearly 5 meters long, and it had an outer shell. It was extremely resistant to attacks, and, cough, the girl suddenly pulled back and dodged the opponent's sudden tail whip. She jumped back 3 times in a row and barely escaped the opponent's attack range. After that, she knelt on the ground on one knee and vomited a mouthful of dark red blood. Part of the blood had faintly turned dark green. Is it poisonous? Perhaps the black mist that the enemy had spread out wasn't meant to hide its true appearance, but purely to deal with the poison gas in close combat. The opponent's body didn't have 4 limbs, so close combat was very disadvantageous for it. At this point, Blossoming Courtyard Yuan had more or less guessed the opponent's true identity. It was a member of the 100 Ghost Nightwalker, a giant insect monster known as the 100 Feet. It was said that the largest member of this monster could even wrap around a mountain if it spread its body. Because the 100 Feet was a family of the earth spiders, it also had an extremely powerful cursed defense like the earth spiders. In addition, it had the exoskeleton that most insect monsters had, as well as its unique venom. For the current Yuan, it was undoubtedly a troublesome enemy. Blossoming Courtyard Yuan. Chahaya, who didn't know how to intervene, couldn't help but feel a little anxious when he saw the girl vomit blood. "It's all right, don't worry." Blossoming Courtyard Yuyuan struggled to stand up, but her body looked a little wobbly. "I'll buy you some time. Mayama-senpai, you run first. As long as you leave here, I'll naturally find a way to escape." She was lying. Chihaya, who had become very sensitive due to his past experience, immediately noticed the girl's lie. Perhaps this girl, who was a year younger than him, was already mentally prepared to die here. Why do you have to go to this extent? Chihaya couldn't understand. Blossoming Courtyard Yuan didn't answer, but instead took out a string of beads from somewhere and put on her wrist. The Heavenly Lady of Lake Pipa, the ghost girl of Ao states king of the evil road. Of my 4 souls, the fortunate soul is in front, the desolate soul is behind, the harmony soul is on the left, and the strange soul is on the right. I am eternally bound to the underworld wheel, willing to follow the orders of the Amaterasu great god and return here as the great god. I am Suzaku-Guzan. The 3 beads on the beads were clearly different from the others. They were pale gold, and as the girl chanted, they turned into transparent glass beads. The golden halos inside the beads flowed out of the beads, turning into 3 swords of light with swastikas imprinted on them, floating around the girl. The girl's black hair also lost its color and turned snow white. Her eyes lost their focus, and it was as if her consciousness had completely disappeared. This was Blossoming Courtyard Yuan's final trump card, Divine Bestowal. Using her 4 souls as the price, she asked the great god of Suzaku to descend and fulfill her wish. Just as this once-in-a-lifetime divine bestowal was about to be completed, a black sword mark suddenly appeared out of thin air and cut across Blossoming Courtyard Yuan's body. That was not a sword move, but a phenomenon caused by the space being cut apart. For some reason, the moment this sword mark appeared, Suzuka Damon Kami, who was about to seize Hanyo Yuya's soul and possess her body, was like a mouse that saw a cat and returned to Takamajahara in an instant. Without the great god of Suzaku as the target of the prayer, the divine bestowal was naturally stopped. Blossoming Courtyard Yuan, who had all her strength drained, collapsed on the ground. She was at a loss as to what to do, together with Chihaya Fukuyama, looked at the black sword mark on Blossoming Courtyard Yuan's body. Because the black sword mark had cut open the space, it had caused the space to become chaotic for a short period of time. The power of the space had forcibly imprisoned the originally insufferably arrogant Dabaizu, and it couldn't even move its tentacles. Then, a voice came from the sword mark. "Damn, I think I accidentally cut something. Emoli, are the space coordinates you gave me really okay?" Chapter 89. Then, a little girl's voice came from the sword mark. "All rights to interpret this coordinate belong to me. What's this overbearing clause? You didn't say anything before. If I break something valuable, I won't have the money to pay for it." The first male voice said hurriedly. "Then, why don't you close this spatial rift quickly, Lord God? Why don't we pretend that we don't know anything and look around?" Another female voice chimed in. However, Chihaya Fukuyama immediately recognized the owner of this voice. "Asahi, is it you?" She carefully asked Dabaizu, who was almost cut in half but was still frozen due to the spatial distortion. "This voice, is it Mayama-sama?" Asahi Sakurakanji's joyful voice came from behind the sword mark. "Lord God, you're right, it's here. Well, if you really break something, we'll split it," the first male voice grumbled reluctantly. At this time, Chihaya also recognized the owner of the voice. If he was not mistaken, it should be the perverted idiot in beach pants from this morning. And the child's voice was undoubtedly Emoli. While Chihaya was guessing, another spatial rift appeared onto Baizu's body. However, this time, it was vertical and formed a cross with the previous one. At the same time, because of this, the middle point of the 2 sword marks expanded to a size large enough for people to pass through. Sushinshin, Emoli, and Asahi Sakurakanji all came out one by one. Although he did not know what was going on, it seemed like he was saved. Chihaya Fukuyama was only now relieved. After Su Xinxing drilled through the spatial crack he had created, he hurriedly looked back to see what he had cut. In the end, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Why is this centipede making it look like he's from the crucifixion of Jesus? Only then did the two sword marks onto Baizu's body disappear. At the same time, space was restored due to the world's self-recovery ability. Then, the two huge cross-shaped wounds onto Baizu's body spurted out green body fluids like fountains. As soon as the green pus with the smell of sulfur fell to the ground, white smoke rose into the air and left holes in the ground. Wow, is this a monster? Asahi Sakura Kanji hid behind Su Xinxing like a little quail. He carefully poked his head out and looked at the dying Baizu on the ground. I don't think so. When monsters fight, they use witchcraft or directly use their claws and teeth to attack physically. They won't spit out green things like blood to scare off their enemies. From the looks of it, it should be an endangered insect like the cobra that spits venom to defend against its enemies. Su Xinxing pretended to know a lot. He touched his chin and speculated, it should be worth a lot of money if it's sold to the insect museum. No, how can there be such a big insect in the world? Chihaya Fukuyama couldn't help but complain. That's right. Centipedes are arthropods, not insects. That's not the point. Chihaya felt that if he had a paper fan or something like that in his hand, he would definitely slap the centipede's head without hesitation. That's the monster Baizu. Hanny Yuan, who still hadn't caught her breath, squeezed out a voice from her throat. Be careful of poison. Before she finished, the angry Baizu spat out a green ball of venom at the place where Su Xinxing and the others were gathered. You're not the only one who knows how to spit. Su Xinxing looked at the flying ball of venom and smiled disdainfully. Then, before he could gather his chi in his dantian, he spat out a mouthful of saliva from his abdomen, and his face was covered by the ball of venom. The others inexplicably quieted down and looked at Su Xinxing, whose face was covered in green mucus. Only Su Xinxing calmly took out the free napkin from the school cafeteria and wiped the venom on his face. Of course, the napkin turned into ashes as soon as it touched the venom. Angry. Although Su Xinxing didn't do anything, everyone seemed to see a cross-shaped vein on his forehead. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely oppressive. Baizu, who didn't understand the atmosphere, raised the front half of its body again like a snake, revealing a ferocious face similar to a human face, but covered with a stock index structure and the unique spikes of insects. It said with a hissing voice, just unfortunately, it couldn't even say the second word. The next moment, starting from its chin, its entire body disappeared. Half of its face fell from mid-air to the ground, making a sticky sound like a wet rag falling to the ground. What the hell happened? Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakura Kanji were confused. Only Hannigan Yuan barely guessed one thing. Su Xinxing, who was standing about 30 meters away from Baizu, had a piece of green viscera stuck on his right fist. He couldn't have blown off everything below the chin with one punch, right? How dare you make my emoli so dirty? You deserve to die. Su Xinxing slowly walked to the front of Baizu's remaining head and said coldly, No, you're angry because it spat on your face. Chihaya Fukuyama silently complained in her heart. She then turned around to take a look and discovered that the culprit who had covered Jasmine in mud was still sitting on the ground with a helpless expression on his face because he didn't know who Jasmine was. I just want to become a higher creature. Why, humans, do you have to stop me? The centipede with only half a head struggled and roared. Nonsense, because you're ugly. Su Xinxing replied without hesitation. Next life, don't spit on me. After that, he stomped on the remaining half of Baizu's head. Then, our main character hugged his smoking feet and screamed in pain. Ah, my shoes. I forgot to put protection on my shoes. Putting aside Su Xinxing, who was fooling around, Asahi Sakura Kanji's eyes fell on the miserable Hannigan Yuan and couldn't help but scream. What a serious injury. And he's poisoned. I'll make it clear in advance that I don't know any healing techniques, Su Xinxing said lazily as he put down his foot. His big toe could already be seen. Ditto. Emoli, who knew healing spells but was dissatisfied because of the inexplicable attack, said concisely. Chapter 90. In the end, Asahi Sakurakanji asked Chihaya Fukuyama to preside over the ceremony for her. Then, she used Kagura to treat Hanakeyuin's injuries. Since Chihaya Fukuyama's divinity was inclined toward water, and water also had the meaning of healing and the origin of life, even though Chihaya was not yet a god, the effect of his ceremony was no worse than Sushinshing's. Although Hanakeyuin was not completely healed, she at least regained her mobility. After watching Hanakeyuin leave, Asahi Sakurakanji stretched her back as if she had completed a great task. Great, Lord God. You have successfully cured the monster in the well. From now on, we don't have to worry anymore. I'm sorry to affect your good mood, but I still have to say that the monster didn't escape from the well. Sushinshing immediately poured cold water on Sakurakanji's enthusiasm. What? But didn't it attack Lord Yamanaka? Asahi Sakurakanji asked in confusion. Didn't you hear the monster's last words before it died? It attacked the butt. Ahem. The main reason it attacked Yamanaka was because Yamanaka had an incomplete divinity. As long as you get one of them, you'll have the opportunity to become a god. In this era where spiritual energy is thin, if you want to become a more powerful existence as soon as possible, becoming a god is undoubtedly the easiest and most convenient way. Not to mention that Yamanaka has a divinity from Huaxia, which is much more valuable than the one in Takamagara. Sushinshing explained casually, and there is one more thing that proves that the centipede is not the monster in the well. Nananani? Asahi Sakurakanji asked quickly. The monster's corpse is in the well. I'm afraid it died not long after it was sealed in the well. That monster is dead? Asahi Sakurakanji asked in disbelief with his eyes wide open. Most likely, but for supernatural creatures, death doesn't mean the end of life. Many supernatural creatures are able to exert more power after they break free from the shackles of their bodies. Sushinshing continued to speculate. The monster in the well was able to break free from the seal so quickly and escape from the White Bell Shrine. In other words, our real enemy is a cunning spiritual creature. Wow, it sounds so troublesome. Asahi Sakurakanji could not help but feel a little discouraged. Chihaya Fukuyama, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped and turned around. Spiritual creature, supernatural creature, or monster, whatever it is. She looked at Sushinshing and the others angrily. What do you mean by following me all the way back? Isn't that natural? Sushinshing looked surprised. Of course I'm going home with you. Of course. I only invited Jasmine. Speaking of which, Mayama-sama has never invited me to her house before. Sakura Kobayashi Asahi hung her head dejectedly, looking very lost. Chihaya Fukuyama did not expect Asahi Sakurakanji to care so much, and could not help but feel a little flustered. That's because I'm different at home and at school. Yo, Miss Buttocks, who likes the new and hates the old. Sushinshing added. Shut up. Chihaya yelled at Sushinshing with one hand on her waist. Then, she scratched her face awkwardly and said to Asahi Sakurakanji, I can invite you, but maybe you'll be disillusioned with me at school. It's okay. No matter what secrets you have, I don't mind. Even if you're a cute boy, I don't care. In that case, you and Mayama-sama can form an interesting couple. Chihaya-kun, I didn't expect you to be such a cute boy. No, stop. Mayama-sama, we can't do it. That Fujoshi over there, shut up. Hurry up and shut up. Aren't you making me imagine? For the first time in his life, Sushinshing hated his rich imagination. You don't have to do that. Sakurakanji covered his red face and followed behind Chihaya Fukuyama. You pervert over there. You're not allowed to follow me. Chihaya stuck her tongue out at Sushinshing and left with Emoli, who was bored to death, and Sakurakanji, who smiled apologetically at Sushinshing. In any case, I'm your savior. Sushinshing stood alone on the street. For some reason, the ballad of Little Cabbage, The Field is Yellow, 2 or 3 years old, no mother, floated to the side. Although it was nice to be able to hear the ballad of the celestial empire in a foreign land, there was a subtle sense of desolation. Dividing line. That's right. That's why I came here to freeload. Su Shinshin gave the girl a thumbs up and grinned. His teeth lit up like an anime. Get out. Hanaka Yun's dead fish eyes were half opened and ordered him to leave without hesitation. But then again, your place is really messy. Ignoring the owner's anger, Su Shinshin looked around. How should he put it? It was probably a tragedy that would only happen after an otaku who had no ability to live in the house for a whole year. Including the walkway, there were black garbage bags everywhere. Even a space to step on them was pitifully small. Although the garbage bags were covered with special charms to ensure that there would be no bugs, these charms were usually used to preserve the specialized organs of corpses or monsters. The smell alone made Su Shinshin, who was a housewife in a sense, frown. Clothes including bras and underwear were casually thrown on the sofa and bed. There were even some girls' underwear on the ground. The kitchen door was covered with ceiling charms. Just by looking at it, it gave people the feeling that something indescribable was sealed inside. To be honest, Su Shinshin felt that even through the door, he could feel something wriggling in the pool inside. Leftover noodles and snacks were randomly piled on the desk and coffee table. Next to them was a half-open spellbook. Su Shinshin even saw stains of soup on the pages of the spellbook. Beside the coffee table, there was a stack of spellbooks that were messily piled up. It was worth mentioning that there were many almond yellow paper charms hanging on the balcony, which was originally used to hang clothes to dry. I don't need you to care about my business. Hanakama Yuan was still trying to be brave. Wait, your expression is so scary. Hey, what are you doing? Yi. Player Su Shinshin changed class from a god to a housewife. It's worth celebrating. It's worth celebrating. Chapter 91. Why does Yuan-chan look so shiny today? Kayako pointed to Hanakuen Yuan, who was reading by the window, as usual. For some reason, she was so excited as if she had discovered the new world. Nothing. Yuan still answered with a poker face. Because there was a troublesome guest at home. I definitely can't tell her these words. Instead, I should tell her why this Kai fellow is always playing with me, even though I've ignored her so many times. Thinking of the person who had been staying at her house since yesterday, even Hanakuen Yuan, who was known for being fearless in Inyang Liao, felt a little tricky. As the eldest daughter of Hanakuen family, Yuan had devoted all her energy to the cultivation of Inyang Master since she was a child. Her daily life was basically a free life. Later, Hanakuen family suddenly declined for some reasons. Yuan, who shouldered the burden of reviving the family, joined Inyang Liao at the age of 12 through a friend who used to be good friends with Hanakuen family. She had been running in the front line to perform various dangerous tasks. Only by letting her name resound in the inner world of Fusong as the head of the family could Hanakuen family once again get the opportunity to return to the list of big families. Because the enemies in this kind of high-level task were either evil sorcerers or extremely dangerous demons, Yuan had to devote herself to the task and had no other energy to her daily life. Anyway, the place where she stayed when performing the task was assigned by Inyang Liao. No matter how dirty it was during the task, as long as the task was over, it had nothing to do with her. To put it bluntly, the house where she lived was similar to a disposable item, so there was no need to cherish it. Speaking of which, Inyang Liao should have received the news about what happened here. The huge pit made by Half-Step Giant Gate yesterday had disappeared when she passed by this morning. It was probably dealt with by Inyang Liao. In that case, why didn't she get the new task order? With the protection of such a powerful god and his follower, the girl named Chihaya Fukuyama would not be in danger at all. Although he didn't want to admit it, Hanakuen Yuan knew very well that he wasn't that man's opponent. Yesterday, after he decided to stay in her house, the girl tried every means to drive him out, but in the end, all of them failed. Incantations and words had no effect on him at all. Even direct, offensive incantations could be destroyed by him with a wave of his hand. Not to mention the low-level Shikigami, The few high-level Shikigami that had a certain level of divinity did not dare to respond to his summons. Even the taijutsu that she had high hopes for was easily broken by him with a flick of his forehead. After the failure of the resistance, he had tasted the humiliation that was second only to the moment of the decline of the Blossom Courtyard family. Even though Yu Yuan had developed the ability to not show her emotions during these years of missions, once she thought of the scene where she was forced to wash her underwear yesterday, she could not help but clench the pages in her hands. Oh, as expected, Yu Yuan-chan's expression today is very strange. Sight-size index finger pressed against her lips, revealing a naughty smile. Could it be that Yu Yuan-chan is thinking about a man? You got it right. Little Vegetable had guessed correctly. As expected, as a transfer student, Yu Yuan-chan must have liked a boy in her previous school, right? Quickly talk to Little Vegetable about him. How tall is he? Is he handsome? How are his grades? Is he from the sports club? Little Vegetable feels that boys are the most attractive when they are sweating on the playground. No. Although she was indeed thinking about a man, the content was all wrong. Blossom Courtyard Yu Yuan, as usual, was trying to remain calm in the midst of Little Vegetable's machine gun-like chatter. In fact, if it were not for the fact that she could not even hear the class bell, Yu Yuan would have wanted to set up a mute enchantment around her. Hey, don't be shy. Little Vegetable, let me tell you, Yu Yuan-chan is so cute. If you were in a co-ed school, you would definitely be welcomed by many boys. By the way, did you confess to him? I have never been to a commoner's school, so I am very interested in that kind of small place. Is there a legendary tree in the backyard of all commoner schools? As long as you confess under the tree, you will definitely succeed. By the way, the boy Yu Yuan-chan likes wouldn't be from the baseball club, right? Going to Koshian together or something. Speaking of baseball, we are planning to play baseball in the afternoon's physical education lesson. Teacher Iloan found out. Teacher, do you want to play baseball with us? Not far away, the blonde English teacher who had just started his job revealed an expression that something was wrong, but he still could not escape the fate of being pestered by Little Vegetable. He could only smile bitterly as he chatted with her while walking out of the classroom. This made Yu Yuan, who had escaped from Little Vegetable's hell, heave a sigh of relief. Just at this moment, a paper crane swayed as it flew in from outside the window. Yu Yuan turned around to take a look and realized that the other students in the class did not seem to be paying attention to this side. She quietly caught it and opened it up, reverting it back to a letter paper and spread on the page, roughly reading the words on it. This was a new mission from Enyang Liao, but the contents of the mission made her, who wanted to escape from Su Xinxing as soon as possible, disappointed. According to the letter, in a short period of time, in the city beside Huanghua Academy, which was to say the city where Chihaya Fukuyama's house was located, there would be a national traveling natural history exhibition organized by the capital's National Museum. There was even a legendary national treasure like Dejidri Yasetsuna in the exhibition. By the way, the reason why the Dejidri Yasetsuna was kept in the capital's National Museum and not in Enyang Liao's headquarters was because in this era, there was no one who could control it. If it was just a normal exhibition, it would be fine, but if someone wanted to take it for themselves, there was a high chance that the Dejidri Yasetsuna would turn into a demon blade and kill the wielder because of disagreement. The exhibition would last for about half a month, and Yu Yuan's new mission was to protect the treasures in the exhibition during the period of the exhibition. Strange, Yu Yuan narrowed her eyes, somewhat doubtful about this mission. It was not that the mission was too light, but on the contrary, to her, this mission was too heavy. Even as an exhibition, the Dejidri Yasetsuna was undoubtedly one of the strongest supernatural weapons in Japan. Based on Enyang Liao's style, it was impossible for them not to arrange for a few first-rate Enyang master teams to be in charge of this kind of exhibition. But this time, between the lines, there was a feeling that she was the only one in charge. After thinking for a while, she still had no idea, so she could only fold the letter and put it in her pocket. At the same time, she could not help but feel vexed. The place of residence had not changed, which meant that she still had to face that fellow for at least half a month. Chapter 92. Sigh. Mizuki Takamiya was extremely melancholy. The reason naturally stemmed from yesterday's kidnapping case. Her father's indifference towards this matter was already within the young lady's expectations. If it was in the past, Mizuki Takamiya would probably be depressed for a period of time. But today she unexpectedly realized that she did not care about her father's opinion as much as she did in the past. What replaced it was the person who saved her. Yesterday, when the other party asked for the address, it was definitely Phoenix Academy. But after arriving at the academy, she had checked the name list of the academy's security guards because she didn't know their names. She mainly looked at the photos in the name list. Even the bodyguards of those young ladies were not spared. She checked them one by one, but still could not find the person who saved her. That youth seemed to have disappeared into thin air and did not appear in front of her again. This naturally made the young lady who was experiencing love for the first time in her life feel extremely complicated. Even the negotiation that she had specially flown over yesterday to take a look at had fallen through. Because of this, Sister Fagome, are you feeling unwell? Just as Mizuki Takamiya was immersed in self-pity for not being able to find her Prince Charming, a young lady's voice jolted her back to reality. She looked towards the direction of the voice and discovered Wu Yejin, who was holding onto a craft paper document with her head tilted, looking at her with concern. Mizuki Takamiya knew a thing or two about this cute junior's thoughts. But the current her was also at a loss for her future, so naturally, she was unable to give any promises. Good afternoon, 5ye. Hence she revealed her usual gentle smile and said to Wu Yejin in a gentle voice, I'm fine, just a little busy with work recently and a little tired. Really? Do you need me to inform the health teacher to let you sleep over there for a while? Viola Five-Leaf's expression became even more uneasy, and even her childish voice was tinged with a hint of concern. It's all right. I'll rest in the student council room for a while. Towards this junior who was so concerned about her, Mizuki Takamiya could not say anything else and could only reply with a bitter smile. And 5 you're the student council president. You have a lot of things to do, right? Don't waste your time here. Get back to work. How is this a waste of time? Wu Yejin's reaction was unexpectedly big. Even if I spent my whole life on Sister Fei Gong, it wouldn't be a waste. No, it's better to say that I'm prepared to do just that. Well, Wu Yi, I'm very touched by your intentions, but it's not good to delay the work of the student council because of this. Mizuki Takamiya had been with Wu Yejin for quite some time now, and it was not the first time she had experienced this kind of attitude. She had gradually gotten used to it, and she skillfully changed the topic. By the way, what are you going to do now? I'm talking to the special admissions students whose grades have dropped recently to see if they have any difficulties. We immediately followed Mizuki Takamiya's topic and said, after all, as special admissions students, their main condition is to have good grades. Special admissions students were those commoner students. Because they were admitted into Phoenix Academy, the school fees were much lower than the aristocratic ladies and was only slightly more expensive than the average private high schools. Even if they were commoner families, they would still be able to afford it. Saying that, Wu Yejin flipped through the documents in the brown paper bag and then nodded slightly. The rest of them basically have no problems, but there's one more. Student Asahi Sakura Kanji can't be found. The other members of the student council also didn't seem to have seen her during the afternoon break. If it's Sakura Kanji, she should be in the shrine on White Bell Mountain. If this matter isn't particularly urgent, I feel that it's better to wait till afternoon tea time before heading to her class to look for her. Sister Fei Gong, do you know that student Sakura Kanji? Wu Yejin asked in surprise. I've seen some information about her in the past. She's a witch from the shrine on White Bell Mountain, and can be considered as one of the original residents of this land. So she was specially admitted without taking the entrance exam. Saying that, Mizuki Takamiya seemed to have recalled something as he smiled slightly. And her witch costume is very beautiful. Oh. Since Sister Fei Gong said so, then I must go this time. Wu Yejin puffed up her cheeks in a fit of pique and bowed to Mizuki Takamiya. Then Sister Fei Gong, forgive me for taking my leave first. And do your best, 5-leaf. Fei Gong smiled as she cheered Wu Yejin on. Leave it to me. The young lady straightened her body and saluted Mizuki Takamiya. Dividing line, although she had confidently said those words in front of Mizuki Takamiya, but when they really started climbing the mountain, Wu Yejin realized that it wasn't as easy as she thought. Is White Bell Mountain that tall? After climbing for a while, she looked up and discovered that the mountain path was still as long as ever. Wu Yejin, who was sweating profusely and panting heavily, felt an urge to shrink back. Don't tell me that lunch break will already be over by the time I reach the top? No, with these distracting thoughts, it'll be even more difficult to climb back up. Wu Yejin shook her head. Just as she was about to continue climbing, the bushes on the side of the road suddenly trembled, as if something had drilled its way through them, giving her quite a fright. It's clearly daytime. The vegetation on White Bell Mountain was quite dense, and the towering canopies blocked almost all the sunlight, making it a little dark. Moreover, there were many small wild animals. Apart from the animals that often drilled around the mountain path, there were also all sorts of strange noises coming from the depths of the forest. If one wasn't used to walking on a mountain path, it would be quite scary to walk on the mountain path alone. Wu Yejin, who was almost scared to tears, trembled all over. She stiffly turned her head to the front of the mountain path, and then ran up the mountain as fast as she could. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. She didn't know how long she had been running, but she suddenly discovered that the stairs leading to the mountain path had disappeared, and a shrine that wasn't that great, but was still considered normal, appeared in front of her. However, there weren't many people on the square between the shrine and Tori. It seemed that Sakura Kanji-sen was either in the shrine or behind it. Wu Yejin caught her breath, and then quickly ran through the shrine. As expected, just as she was about to reach the back of the shrine, she heard someone talking. She looked over, and then she was completely stunned. The person who was talking was a man, and the person who was talking to that man was another big sister of Phoenix Academy, Chihaya Fukuyama. Asahi Sakura Kanji, who was the purpose of Wu Yejin's trip, and the transfer student Mo Lee, who had just transferred to Phoenix Academy yesterday, were sitting in the corridor behind the shrine, watching the man and Chihaya Fukuyama talk. Because there was a distance between them, Wu Yejin couldn't hear their conversation clearly, but she could vaguely hear words like almost, "Let me, your butt, pull it out." Wu Yejin felt the temperature on her face rising rapidly, and she reckoned that her face was now extremely red. She tried her best to suppress the words that almost escaped her mouth and didn't allow herself to scream out loud. It's not a pure heterosexual relationship. Ah, 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 ah. Chapter 93. Wu Yejin felt that this wasn't the right time for her to show her face, so she quickly left the Shiranui shrine. On the mountain road, the girl's mind kept replaying the words she just heard. No, I didn't think that Chihaya Fukuyama-senpai, who looked so cold, would be so bold and unrestrained. That was in the wild, right? Furthermore, there were two other students. Wait, could this be the legendary 4P? And there was also Sakura Kanji dressed as a witch. Was this cosplay? Then Mo Lee, who had a childlike body, should be a Lilicon? That Lilicon's attributes were surprisingly complete. The strange knowledge she had learned from the erotic romance novels she had not received from the other young ladies made Viola's face turn even redder. Meow. Due to the wild thoughts in her mind, the five-leaf pansy didn't notice that she missed a step and slipped off the mountain road. After rolling twice, she screamed and slid down the hillside covered with dead branches and rotten leaves. Finally, she fell from a small depression and fell on a pile of dead leaves that exuded the smell of mud. Although she was dizzy from the fall, she miraculously didn't suffer any injuries. Only her uniform was a little dirty and her hair was a little messy. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I was scared to death. Standing up from the pile of dead leaves, Wu Yejin patted off the dead leaves on her skirt. While wiping her tears, she looked around and found that she wasn't far from the foot of the mountain. The file is still here. It's great that I didn't lose it. The girl picked up the file from the ground and held it in her arms. She wobbled away from the pile of dead leaves and planned to go back to the school through the forest. But after a few steps, she found that not far away there was a snow-white cat. Because she never had a pet, Wu Yejin wasn't familiar with cats, but the cat's appearance was a little strange. Rather than calling it a cat, it was more like an animal that was a cross between a cat, a dog, and a mink. It was smaller in size, and it wasn't as thin and long as a mink. It was more like a cat. But the most important thing was not the cat's appearance or breed, but its current state. Wow, she's seriously injured. We have to send her to the veterinary hospital as soon as possible. The kitten was lying in a patch of grass. Its snow-white fur was mostly dyed red by dark red blood. Even the grass under its body was dripping with blood. Because the blood had already scabbed, its fur had also become tufts of hair. In addition, there was a huge wound from its chest to its abdomen that was so deep that its bones could be seen. It looked very miserable. Wu Yejin thought for a moment, then rolled up the craft paper bag and put it under her armpit. She took off the small red checkered vest over her school uniform and gently wrapped it around the injured kitten. She held it in her arms and carefully walked down the mountain. Dividing line, Su Xinxing noticed that someone had run into the shrine and then quickly fled. However, that aura seemed to belong to a normal human, and Immerse didn't warn him, so there shouldn't be any problems. So he continued to talk to Chihaya Fukuyama about the divine position. It's okay if you don't pull the divine position out, but then the divine position will enter your body through that part of your body. Su Xinxing's left hand was empty, and his right index finger made an inserting gesture towards his empty left hand. If it resonates with the divine position in your blood, it should make you want to die, right? You're really talking about the divine position and not something strange? Chihaya Fukuyama rolled his eyes. And even if you want to pull it out, can't you let Immerse do it? Why do you have to do it? Because that's my divine position. No one can touch it except for me, Su Xinxing said matter-of-factly. Even you can only vaguely feel a little squirming movement, right? If it's that easy to pull out, you should have pulled out long ago. Oh. Qinzhao Shenshan subconsciously covered her buttocks, showing a speechless expression of shame and anger. In the end, isn't it because of your carelessness that this kind of thing happened? So in order to make up for my mistake, I've been discussing with you what to do. Su Xinxing shrugged. Other than telling me to let you touch my buttocks, I didn't hear any constructive suggestions from you at all. Touching won't make me pregnant, huh? Are you serious? Chihaya Fukuyama looked at Su Xinxing as if he was looking at a cockroach. Okay, let's think about it at length. Su Xinxing rubbed his hands and said with a dry smile, although I'm sorry to interrupt you, Goddess-sama, Mayama-sama, the lunch break is about to end. Sakura Kanji said from the side. Immerse was still nibbling on the shellfish, soy sauce flavored, provided by Asahi Sakura Kanji. Time flies. Su Xinxing laughed. I have to return these clothes. Where did you get your security uniform? Chihaya Fukuyama asked curiously. You didn't return yesterday's clothes? How can that be? Am I the kind of person who only borrows and never returns? I returned the clothes yesterday. Su Xinxing said righteously. I just borrowed it again today. Is it really borrowed? It's fine, but the person who borrowed the clothes will sleep in the bushes for a little while. Stop. This is not borrowing at all. Although Chihaya wanted to complain, he didn't think it was a big deal. He didn't know the security guard who was stripped anyway. And it's that guy called Shushi again. Chihaya looked at the name tag on Su Xinxing's chest and found that it was the same name as the one from yesterday. Chihaya Fukuyama felt that the guy called Shushi was having a hard time. He was stripped naked and thrown into the bushes for 2 days in a row. In a sense, he was really unlucky, because his figure is similar to mine. The other security guards are too burly. Su Xinxing sighed helplessly. And that guard, Shosher, is also a handsome young man. When Lord God took off his clothes, he was especially pleasing to the eye. Sakura Xiao Lu, who was at the side, interjected excitedly. It made my maiden heart sprout. To be honest, I don't think that a young girl's heart. Su Xinxing wanted to say something, but he felt that if he said something, he would lose. In the end, he silently returned to the shrine and changed back into his own clothes. What is Goddess-sama going to do next? Sakura Kanji helped Su Xinxing pick up the security uniforms scattered on the ground and asked him at the same time. The next thing should be to open the seal in the kitchen. Su Xinxing recalled the messy state of Hanakane's home, touched his chin, and said seriously, "What are you fighting against?" Chihaya Fukuyama, who had already arrived at Tori ahead of them, casually complained. And Mooli secretly stuffed the unfinished shellfish into Su Xinxing's pants pocket. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.